The commissioner comments and responses, and for that, approval of the April and May minutes, because we didn't approve them last month, and we also have the farewell to a few of our compadres who are going to be moving on after this this meeting. Jim Warner, Kel Heck, and Joe Tyndall, who's not here. After which we will be joined for a public, a joint meeting between the Human Rights Commission and the Police Commission, and we will have a community justice update on how that's progressing. And we will also talk about right-of-way prohibited camping, and that will include a public forum for people who wish to speak up about the concerns. Then we'll take a short break, and we'll hold elections for the chair and vice chair, and we will receive the chief's report, and then closing comments, and I'll finish after that. Okay, so first thing on the agenda tonight is public comments. I see we have one person. If anyone else here is interested in speaking, please fill out a paper on the back table against the wall, and we'll reach in.
Okay.
First person. I'll turn the meeting over to Bill.
Okay, our speaker tonight for the public forum is Jessica C. Screen. You have 3 minutes. I'll let you know when there's 20 seconds left. Jessica.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jessica, and I'm speaking as the director of ACT, A Community Together. And I thought I was going to be too late, so I'm not really as prepared as I wish I was. But I realized this is my opportunity to speak to you about the community court thing before you have that topic. And boy, I'll tell you, having these two boards together and on these two topics, the community court and the prohibited camping issue, just really brings so much together in my mind, and regarding the different kinds of work a lot of us are involved in. So I have way more than 3 minutes worth to say, and so I'll have to find some other venue to communicate more about some of that. And a number of you I'd love to talk to individually or in small groups about things, so maybe I'll bug you at some point. And if any of you would like to connect with me about this stuff, but might not be one that I would contact, please let me know so that I can be in touch with you. I've been trying to follow what's going on with the upcoming community court and for several years, and of course with the prohibited camping issue. And one of the things that I do is that I'm active on the Human Rights Commission homelessness work group. And so I have some questions about it, which I raised at a Human Rights Commission meeting, so maybe some of the Human Rights Commissioners would be bringing this here anyway, but just in case they don't, I just want to mention these two things to you and ask that if whoever's presenting about that doesn't mention these things, maybe somebody could ask a question or follow up about it. One is the issue of the people who are homeless who come into the community court, the rooms that'll be at the library, and it'll be voluntary whether or not they get into that system. But those people that don't have a safe legal place to be and who don't fit into the few slots that there are in some of the programs in town, where is the court expecting them to be at night? I hope it's not like, well, if you don't have a safe legal place to be in Eugene, you better be out of town, pretty much by dark. It shouldn't be that way. And so there's the question of what are they going to do about shelter and housing for people that don't have that? The second is, how am I doing on time?
30 seconds.
Okay. The issue of community involvement with the community court as it develops, and this is the key time because it's just about to be underway. And I think there's a lot more community involvement that is possible and needs to be looked into, and you folks can help encourage that. Because I think it takes a whole village to successfully deal with issues as daunting as what that community court's going to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. If there's anybody else who'd like to speak, I think that's it.
Okay, that concludes our public comments, and I'll have comments and responses from the commissioners now. You want to go first? Claire?
Yeah. I really appreciate Majestica's questions. I think both of them are important in very different ways, and ones that I definitely struggle with and don't know the answers to. But certainly it would not be legal or constitutional for us to tell someone that they had to leave town if they didn't have a safe legal place to be. And I don't want to speak for Judge Allen, but everything I know about Judge Allen, that would not be something that he would support or want to have be part of this community court. So, but that is an important question that we as a city need to keep working to address. And then I also appreciate the question of how the community will be more involved in developing the court. I think that's a great question. I do think, to some extent, the Police Commission, the Human Rights Commission, and other volunteers who work on these committees can give input and be part of that as well. But maybe we can ask Judge Allen if he has ideas of a more formal way that the community can get involved.
I guess, this issue's come up and people have been saying, oh, the ordinance is unconstitutional because there's not enough beds in town. Legally speaking, that's an affirmative defense. So the police can certainly tell someone you're not allowed to sleep here. They have an affirmative defense to any ticket they would receive, which is kind of a not totally useless, but not very practical thing. So it's somewhat unsettling because, a prosecution's not going to be successful, but on the other hand, the police need the tools to deal with public problems. So I hope the council will take up some modified thing or some grace period. I think it's completely legitimate to say in certain areas of town, this is not a good place, for you to be staying. On the flip side, there has to be places for people to stay. And we prefer that they be well considered. So I think we're living in the gray area that doesn't really serve anyone's interests over the long term, and I hope that the council will bring it up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Well, unrelated to the public comments today, I just saw a couple articles in the paper about schools, and I was just wondering from the chief's position what kind of rapport you have with the faculties at the schools and the human or the resource officers at the schools with the students, and maybe that's a topic that we could talk about too. Is we have the legalization of marijuana and other things, and what are the trends we're seeing, and maybe that's a topic we could look at in the future. But I was really curious about the rapport that we have with the students and the faculty at the schools.
I think the situation in the schools is pretty good with our officers because their tenure is so long. We haven't had any turnover in our school resource team for quite a while. So they get into a school, they see the kids come into the high school, they stay with them while they graduate. I think my sense is from school administrators that the officers are pretty well trusted, and so together they make up a good team, the school administrators and the police officers. We are seeing an increase in the use of marijuana and the possession of marijuana with young people on high school campuses. And if you like, we could have the school resource team come in and report on what they're experiencing.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to approval of April and May minutes provided in your packet. And if anybody had any changes to it, please let us know so we can correct them. If no changes, I'll Oh, got one.
It's my last meeting, so
I know, you have to find something,
I
yeah.
already told Curtis to make the change, but since it's my last one, I wanted to get it down. On the second page, it's down toward the bottom right above where it says prohibited camping. I'm sorry, it's
April.
It's April. Where it has Mr. Wild agreed, I think the word "to" probably needs to be in there. That was all like that. But I had to get something in for my last.
We're going to miss your scrutiny of all the work that we have here. Thank you very much, Dave. Thanks. So, any other corrections, changes? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve them as corrected.
So moved.
Moved by Edward,
I'll second.
seconded by Bill. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Carried. Very good. Okay, next on the agenda, it is my sad duty to make a presentation. In a way, I'm happy for the people who have served for us so long with us and have done such a great job with us. In another way, it's sad to see good friends go here. So let me ask, Bill's already up here, so Raquel will come up and
I
and
thought
also
next month was my
Jim.
last, so I was going to.
You can always come back.
So, on behalf of the Police Commission and
Nice.
Eugene Police Department, we'd like to present you with the certificate for your service, appreciation for the time you spent at these meetings when you could have been watching TV.
Or my legal
Baseball, basketball game tonight, which we're not seeing. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yeah, Jim, I've always appreciated your insight on a lot of these issues, and has really made some of the other commissioners well think about the other side of these issues. So I'm going to miss you greatly as a member of the commission. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
I'm going to miss everybody too. It's been fun and it's definitely changed in the last 6 years that I've been on. So.
Yeah.
And Joe Tyndall is rotating off, but he's not here tonight, so we'll make that presentation to him at another time. All right. Thank you very much. We could. Okay. I'm going to, we have some time left for the public section, so I'm going to move without objection to the agenda section on elections, and we'll go ahead and pass these around now. What this involved is, according to our bylaws, which are attached hereby to make sure you understand what they mean. They, all the, pass it there, thanks. All the, all the elections have to be public records, so we can't, there aren't any secret ballots allowed, basically. So what we're going to do here on this sheet is to fill in your name where it says your name on the sheet. And we'll open the floor to nominations for chair. I cannot serve. I've already maxed out my time this year. So I'll just be sitting out there, giving away every so often. Yeah.
Bob, I wonder if I could abstain since I won't come here.
No, you're still a commissioner. You're still a commissioner as of right now when the elections are held. So good question, though. Good point. But no. Yeah, you have a right to vote, and in fact, you should. So.
Take a nomination.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll open the floor for nominations.
For chair,
For chair, yeah.
I would like to nominate Bill Whalen.
I'll second that. Okay. Do we have any other nominations for chair? And you can write the name down in where it says nominations for chair, and then check who you want to vote for after we get all the nominations closed. Any other nominations for chair? Any other nominations for chair?
It's a
Any
landslide.
other nominations for chair? I'll say it 3 times, okay. I'll take a motion to close the nominations for chair.
So
Moved by Edward, seconded by Steve. Nominations are closed. We now have, I'll open nominations for the vice chair. Steve.
I nominate Edward.
I'll second.
Nominated by Steve and seconded by Claire. Edward.
You do understand I'm transferring to this commission to avoid one more meeting of mine.
Sorry. You can decline.
No, there's an agenda-setting meeting. It's all right. It's all right. I'm not
Good
declining.
to know your motives, though.
Thank you.
Okay?
I have one that Jim asked me to.
Well, I don't have one, I have a question.
Sure.
And I was going to nominate you also, but I wasn't sure because he's not officially on the board next term. So I don't know, can we
Council has
nominate?
decided, though, correct? No.
So if council will
I'm sorry.
decide Monday night,
Oh,
if for
okay.
whatever reason, the council does not reappoint the two seated commissioners, then you would just have elections again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Thank
wanna
you
make
for
sure.
asking, Jim. Yeah, you're correct.
And the council pack will be out tomorrow, and we'll know what the mayor's endorsement is.
Yeah, I don't expect
Right, oh, yeah.
any reason why
Absolutely.
that wouldn't happen. But good point, and thank you. Any other nominations for vice chair?
I would like to nominate.
Go ahead.
I would like to nominate Scott Nowicki.
Scott? Okay, we have a second to the nomination. I'll second it. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Are there any other nominations for vice chair? If not, I'll take a motion to close the nominations. Moved by Steve, seconded by Jim. Thank you. Okay, so you have your candidates, and you place your name where you're supposed to, put a check mark or an X next to the name of your selected candidate, and then pass the ballots to this way so we can get the card. It's a public ballot, so it doesn't matter. The vote has to be recorded.
Just good taste.
It has to show.
Scott, I pledge to fight a clean campaign.
Yeah. It just might be unanimous.
It should all be that quick, right, Edward?
Yeah.
Campaign.
You don't tell anybody about that.
I just hope he'll keep it confidential.
Okay.
I got the readers ahead of me.
Yeah.
We got everybody.
And you just wrote
Hold on.
Well, I was council president. Yeah. Yeah, and that just was a rotation thing. It's not an election. It's Councilor Evans.
It's a pressure cooker.
every time.
Yeah, though it's a little stressful.
We've had some things too.
Yeah. And then the mayor's out of town.
Everybody did it right in.
Need a delegation. You're like, oh boy.
So there's a lot more to
A little bit, yeah.
Does that work for you
And we
there?
also supervise the police officer.
Anyone you'd like to?
An employee of the council. So, president, vice president.
So you do reviews and everything.
Yes. Worked on this.
Get the results.
I do.
Would you like to announce?
I would be happy to announce. Bill Whalen was elected chair. It was close. Edward Gehring was elected vice chair.
Thank you both.
Is that bribe money?
Monopoly money.
So I don't know who's going to be HRC member.
Yes.
You have some of them.
We're running a little early, as usual. Seems to be the theme here with us. But at this point, we need to wait for the rest of the Human Rights Commission folks to come join us.
Is anyone?
And it's the only thing, I had the chief's report. Perhaps we can get that now. Without objection, I'll, without objection to the agenda change, I'll go ahead and move it. Edward?
It occurs to me that we could have a little mini break right now and let the two commissioners socialize for a minute before we all sit down to work, as long as we have the time available.
Fine.
Just a thought.
I'll withdraw my request for the chief report, and without objection, we'll move to the break section of our agenda.
All right.
Okay, so we got, that's till 6 o'clock.
There's blueberries.
Very
minutes, we have.
I know. You.
It's a wonderful deal. You keep it as chairman.
Seriously, I should have a word to some of these folks before the meeting.
Yes. Yeah. We're watching, so, yeah. No.
We'll do it.
And, yeah, so it's usually 2 sessions a week.
These are the humble requests. Humble and modest requests. And their reaction is the papers are flowing, and they go in the air, and they eventually draft. There's a lot of commenting, and they're doing the caucus, and it usually lasts about 6
Well, that's my impression of how the Sacred Heart's also negotiating. And they're going on, they will take it because that's kind of their walking out and not coming back. Yes.
I'm laughing at 12 to 1:30, an hour and a half.
Well, they're a small unit, there's only 30 of them. And then we tried to time it so the nurses who are in the hospital could take their break, their lunch break, and come out. That's
They're helping too.
yeah, because there's only 30 of them, so maybe 7 of them can get out there at a time, so we're trying to get other folks to be out there with them. And it's just an info ticket, it's not a strike, so it's just to get some press and make a statement. Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Yeah. No, that's a big deal. Yeah. Oh, did they really? Oh, that's good. Yeah, so it's just an informational picket, so it's a little more local than a strike. If they were a bigger unit, then they might have done a 4 hours. There's only 30 of them, and then some of them have to work, because they're not gonna interrupt work. Well, you know,
so they've been having some trouble.
And invite your chair. So if you're okay to start at 6,
so, you know, that's part of the hazardous board.
A lot of so it's like, okay, there is a knockoff law.
Yeah. And then, you know, what happens if she does?
So it's kind of like, so one, still violating federal law, but you know, it depends. They kind of let them decide what the hard thing is, you live there, they go on campus and federally
I haven't heard anything. That'd be a good question. I've asked her, but I saw who it was. That would move forward to the next step. You saw that. So I thought it was really neat. The military veteran, a young lady, she'd be sharp and bring Yeah, there were.
But I think pretty specific.
Yeah.
You call the family.
So I'm legal, right?
You were.
Yeah. And
Memory here.
every reason to talk about it.
And stuff. Go to all different schools.
Yeah, about what? Oh, it's out of control this year. Yeah. I just talked to the sergeant
It's just that it was amusing.
earlier this week about stuff, and I've been seeing it and hearing about it, but he said it's just through this the drug stuff.
It's for a couple of talks.
And it's incredible the way that the SRO blends into the staff. I was included in a pretty significant number of the principals meetings. The principal and I would meet every day. It's an interesting position because we're at that administrative level of issues and dealings, but we're not part of the school. So I want to be kind of a sounding board. Actually, things that she couldn't really talk to other people about, but I was safe. So it really helps integrate into making just a strong relationship. And you integrated being part of the school. So it's a neat relationship. What's that?
Another student reports another friend.
With somebody.
They'll pull the kid in the office. They'll deal with the administrative part. Then they'll pull me in. It was pretty much a zero tolerance. So the kids get it's both. So then we would call the parents, give the parents an opportunity to show up, interview the kids, the parents present, and then most of the time, kind of
I'm mostly a lot of blocks that way. The general list.
And it's going to be really hard.
You can
Yeah, I don't understand it.
That's very interesting. It's not got the background for it.
No, exactly. So it definitely. It'll be interesting to see how edible they're so now. I see how popular they are versus being able to
There's people in presidential care. Mostly
I think April, May, June, that weather turn time, there was not a common.
I sat down.
It's a state-run program.
And that was 3 times I came out of it.
I think she said because
No, I do have
State senate.
Oh, I
Three times.
There's a lot of kids' parents who are
Break is over. If I could get everybody to join us back at the table, please. The members of the Human Rights Commission also join us at the table, please. Those members from the Human Rights Commission that are here tonight. I believe there's some name tags over here. If you want to grab your name tag and come join us, that would be great. I see Judge Allen is here and Captain Cam Carr. So I want to acknowledge all the folks from Eugene Police that have joined us tonight for this important topic. Thank you all for coming, and as well as the people who have shown up here tonight and demonstrated interest in what we're talking about. Thank you all. Do we have members of St. Vincent de Paul here tonight?
They'll be coming for the second part.
Okay.
Our council's not-
All right. Okay. So I will go ahead and call this portion of the meeting to order for the joint meeting of the Human Relations Commission and the Human Rights Commission and the Police Commission. Thank you. So we are, I would like someone to introduce the members of the Human Rights Commission. Someone would do that. Okay, sure. Let's start here.
All right, I'm Andrew Thompson, and I'll be pinch hitting for our chair people this evening because they have to be moved.
Thank you, Andy. At the table.
I'm Jennifer Francer-Knowlton, and I'm the vice chair on the commission. I have to leave early tonight. I apologize.
Okay.
I guess I should introduce myself. The Human Rights Commission. This is other Edward.
I'm Edward McClellan, also a member of the Human Rights Commission.
Okay.
And I'm Chris Pryor, and I'm on the Human Rights Commission.
Thank you. It's good to have a second council person.
Now.
Perhaps I'm remiss. Should we go around and introduce ourselves to you? We've asked you to introduce yourselves to us. I'm Bob Walker. I'm the commission chair.
Bill Whalen, I'm the vice chair.
Pete Kearns, police chief.
Claire Syret, City Council.
Scott Nowicki.
Edward Gehring again.
Terry Robertson.
Steve McIntyre.
Rick Callahan.
Marty Wilde.
Jim Garner.
Carter Falling.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we're here tonight because we are concerned as citizens and as members of the community about an issue that's kept us, engaged for a number of our meetings, especially with regard to police procedures and trespass and park rules, and we've gone over so many of these. And we all recognize what a dilemma this is for the city and for the police and for the citizens and for the homeless people, of course, who are also, having to deal with issues that they have to deal with in their daily life. So at this time, I'm going to, who's handling the community justice issue? Judge Allen?
And Captain Camcar.
Oh, Captain Cameron. Sorry, my notes weren't saying enough. So.
I'm just his bodyguard.
Thank you. So we're going to talk about the community justice court and the update on how we're doing with that. So whoever would like to start, that would be great.
Well, let me start. Community, it's a community court, and when you say that, a lot of people think, oh, that's great, but what is a community court? And the answer is it's a lot of different things in a lot of different jurisdictions. When you go to the national conventions, and I've been to 2 of those, one in San Francisco, and then Chris and I went to Chicago, you see people doing justice in a different way, but they're not all the same. They're not cookie cutter. There's Dallas does it differently than Hartford, who does it differently than Red Hook in the Bronx, it does it differently than Orange County, that does it differently than San Francisco or Seattle or Spokane or North Las Vegas. I mean, we're constructing something, each of us, that we think will work in our community. So that's what we're trying to do. Obviously, for a certain clientele, can I call it that? A certain clientele, the old threat and punishment
routine just isn't going to be effective. You are not going to solve the problem that brought that person to court by giving them X days in jail or a fine of Y dollars, which they can't pay and which goes directly to collection. Those are useless acts often. A couple of weeks ago, I had a person who had their 28th alcohol-related offense this year, and so the prosecutor who was not Susan Treem, was a less enlightened prosecutor, said, well, give him 15 days in jail. And I said, yeah, okay, so what's that going to solve? Okay, we got a $700,000+ contract with the jail, so giving people time in jail costs us money. And am I going to spend that money on that person? No, I want to do something else. I don't want to go that way anymore. That's an ineffective way. The prosecutor's answer is, well, that keeps them out of our hair for 15 days. When I started doing this a long time ago, we had what was called the chronic offender list. And if you were on that chronic offender list, there were maybe 25 people, and you had an open container, it was 100 days in jail. Oh, wow. Well, that was a long time ago. That was before the county forgot that the city went in with them on the jail and started charging us for the beds. But it was, that was 20 or 30 years ago that happened. Well, what did that solve? It didn't solve anything. So we're looking to solve some of the ongoing problems that we have, and we're looking to help people. So I would call it compassionate justice instead of hard-fisted justice. We still have, this is just part of a little piece of the court pie. We're just moving a little piece over and taking it in a different way. We still have what they call in Spokane the Alpha Court, and that's a court where you have sanctions, and you should have sanctions, and you're always going to need to have sanctions, but it's not the same kind of situation. So it doesn't, if you've been doing this for as long as I have and as long as the people in that picture have, you have that same feeling that this isn't working. And it doesn't, it's true across the whole justice system. You're having a backlash now about the jails and the kind of incarceration that we have in this country. The first conference that I went to was in San Francisco. Lieutenant Governor of California came in and spoke to us, and he said in 1980 there were 20,000 people incarcerated in California's prisons. Now there are over 250,000, and the recidivism rate's 84%. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that isn't working. So this is part of a movement away from traditional kinds of, quote, justice to more problem solving. So we want to try to solve the problem. We want, the goal here is to look back and say, okay, here's the behavior that brought this person to court, but what caused that behavior? What's the cause of that? Because if you can go back and deal with that cause, you've done everybody a favor. That person who is a citizen of our community can become a meaningful citizen of our community, and you're not going to have this revolving door of the same thing over and over again. Having said that, please understand, we are only a tool in the toolbox. We are not the whole answer. We are not going to save every situation and make every person a better citizen of the community, but we're going to try, and that's something that's new and different. So that's the background for community court. That's the reason that we do it. That's the reason that all those people there went to Spokane. And so Sam and I are going to tell you about that trip. I was the instigator for that trip, and thank God it worked out, because it was a little bit of a shot in the dark. We were kind of stuck. We didn't really know what we wanted. We had the National Center for State Courts, and we had all kinds of experts who come in and tell us, well, you need to figure out how to make this work. Nobody came in and said, here's a template, and it probably worked for you. We happened to find one, luckily, in Spokane. And the reason I went to Spokane, wanted to go to Spokane, is I wanted to see a court that immediately connected the people to the service providers, as opposed to, I wanted to see an immediate court. I wanted to see a court where you get a citation, you're in court within 2 to 7 days, you have a court-appointed attorney, you have a needs assessment, you have a risk assessment. The result of that, you connect to providers who are right there. I wanted to see how that worked because it seemed like the right way to do it. So that's why we went to Spokane. So I'm going to let Sam take over with his PowerPoint. He is the photographer. I will say to you the people that you have here. The gentleman with the beard on the left, Tony Rasta, very fine defense attorney, very committed to helping his client. Susan Treem is a terrific prosecutor. She's a prosecutor for now. She's not like other prosecutors we've had in the past that came from the DA's office that are interested in convictions and jail time. That's not Susan's thing at all. She signed on with the city as a prosecutor because of this, because of what we're going to try to do now. Cheryl Stone's on my right. She's really a person who gets so much done. She has a passion for this. She has a connection to doing it. She's written papers on it. In fact, she gave me a paper when she came to work for us and said, "What do you think about this?" And it took me about 10 minutes to read it, and 1 minute to go, "Yeah, we're going to do it." So she's really the start of that. The Sam Kamkar, the bodyguard. Then you've got Julie Smith, who community courts really start on the street with community policing. That old phrase that we heard a long time ago is back, and she's community policing on steroids. And I think you probably know that, what she's doing downtown, the way she's contacting people ahead of any offense without threat, just as what can we do to help you, who are you, what are your needs. It's a whole different way of doing business. We tried the other way. We tried the exclusion zone. Okay, now we're trying the inclusion zone. We're trying to include these people in our community. And Mary Morey, who you may know, started our mental health court, has a terrific passion for it and for disadvantaged people. That mental health court has really done wonders, and it's sort of a model of what we'd like to do with some of our other things. Greg Gill is a guy who's one of our younger judges. He's the future, but he's just as committed as the rest of us to this kind of process. Okay, Sam.
Thank you, Judge. Carter, I understand we have about 3.5 hours. Okay, so Judge Allen and I can probably talk about our Spokane site visit for about literally 3 to 3.5 hours because we're pumped up. We are so excited about what we learned, and it's been an exhilarating experience for us. So, but we're going to try to tone it down and push through, respecting your time. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that you don't often see a police officer and a prosecutor and a defense attorney standing in the same photograph and smiling at the same time. And really one of the lessons that we took from our site visit is that that's what it takes. It takes true collaboration, true teamwork, setting aside our differences and focusing on the common goal. And the common goal are the stated goals that the judge just talked about. Taking that community policing approach. In 1989, I went on my first ride-along and with a police officer in Portland. And I got a chance to see community policing at play. And I fell in love with the job. Aside from the fact that we had a chance to drive fast and bust through red lights, that was the bonus. But watching the officer that I rode with, a female officer by the name of Katie Potter, and the way she interacted with people, she solved problems and she built trust, and that was back in '89. And really, community court is all about that. So the question is, why did we choose Spokane site visit? It looks like you've got the PowerPoint. Spokane, one of the reasons is because of the size. Roughly about the same population, a little bit bigger than us. They're a university college town. We are a university college town. We didn't give them as much credit for their college because they don't have the ducks. So, but that's okay. And of course, they're a recognized leader. They've done a good job, and by all accounts, this program has been working for them. They've been doing it for about 2.5 years or so.
It started in December of 13.
December of 13. So that's why we chose Spokane, and so was the field trip for us. Downtown Spokane was their primary area of concern and responsibility, and much like our downtown, they have low-income housing, just like we do. Multiple numerous service providers, just like we do. As we walked around downtown and talked to people, we saw travelers, we saw homeless, we saw people in expensive suits, and we saw people in not so expensive suits. And lots of bars and clubs, just like we have lots of bars and clubs. And as you can see, a lot of similarities. And the downtown public library, which we learned plays a significant role in this program. And you'll see an example of that in just a second. So, four basic things we want to cover with you. Like any other program, you've got to have mission, goals, and objectives. They've done an outstanding job of establishing those things, and we're trying to do the same. They've identified who are the key players. We've also done the same thing. You have to have a law enforcement agency. If the Eugene Police Department is not on board with this is not going to work, right? If the prosecutor is not on board, it's not going to work. So they've identified all the principal agencies, and they've given them specific roles and responsibilities about what is it that's expected of you, and everybody has that buy-in. And we'll look at that in just a little bit. And Judge Allen will speak to you in more detail about what this process looks like, because sometimes we assume that everybody understands the court system, and this is definitely not a traditional court. And then last but not least, any program, if you don't evaluate the program and you don't collect data, at the end you're not going to know the results. They're going through that evaluation process as we speak. So with their goals and missions, I highlighted downtown there for you, as well as collaboration and problem solving, because that's what our focus is going to be. We're going to start out in downtown, and as we learned in Spokane, what's happened is because they've been successful, other communities within the corporate city limits of Spokane are coming up to their prosecutors, to their judge, and so forth, and they're saying, hey, can we do the same thing in our neighborhood? Because they see the results. And it's all about problem solving. It's not about the old days of I'm going to give you a ticket, and I'm going to give you another ticket, and by the way, I'm going to give you another ticket, and I'm going to take you to jail, even though I know you're not going to be able to pay. So what do we do? And Judge mentioned Julie Smith, and she's doing those very same things right now. Partnership, holding defendants accountable. One of the concerns that we had at the beginning was, well, what does this mean? And we've heard those concerns. Does this mean that we're not going to hold people accountable? Now everybody just gets a hug. That's not the case. In fact, accountability is built into this. In fact, there will be more accountability based on what we saw than what we have today. As Judge Allen has seen it, we've seen it. We can give lots of tickets and lots of arrests, and what happens? Even if they go to jail within a few hours, they're out of jail. Whereas here, we call it accountability with responsibility. And so it's very important. I also wanted to highlight the victim for you, the victim's needs. In a criminal justice system, sometimes, in spite of our best efforts, we sometimes forget about the victim. Now, that victim could be a person, or it could be a business or an entity. And what we saw as we talked and we walked around is ways that they bring the victim into the picture. And sometimes they connect the offender, and you notice I didn't say the defendant, the person who may be breaking the law, and with the victim, so that they can work together so that bad things don't happen later on. So. They're participating agencies. They've got the court administrator. In this case, Cheryl Stone is our court administrator, outstanding individual to work with, very competent. Assistant prosecuting attorney. The public defender, you saw the photographs early on. They have what's called a court community probation officer. We're not going to have a probation officer. Ours will be more like a case management person. Of course, their police department. They have a downtown team, just like our downtown team, with dedicated officers and command staff. And they are 100% on board with this program. We saw the excitement. I met with their captain and their command staff, and they were singing the praises of this program. And then, of course, probably one of the most important part of the volunteers. And you'll see an example of that in a couple of slides. The passion, the commitment, the excitement you see among the volunteers that come in. They want to do good for their community, and it really makes this machine run. All right, so the court process, there's an eligibility criteria. Judge Allen, if you could talk about that a little bit about what that means.
Well, basically, you have to start small. We'd like to do this, over the whole city, but that's not realistic. You need to get a program up and running. It's a very different program, so it's almost like starting a whole new court. And it's amazing. I looked today at a timeline for the things we have to accomplish between now and when we start. I wanted to start July 1. Everybody's trying to restrain me, and I see now why. The list just went on and on and on. So you don't just do this as I kind of hoped we would. We just kind of do this, but you restrict it to a geographic area. We have a $200,000 grant from the Bureau of Justice through the Center for Court Innovation in New York, who administers those. 70 cities applied for 10 grants. We got one of those 10 grants. And so that gives us a leg up. It allows us to hire a new person. Sam has referred to the probation officer. The reason they call the person a probation officer is they really are a probation officer in the larger court system. That municipal court has 15 prosecutors and 10 in-house defense attorneys and 3 probation officers, and I don't know how many judges. It's a much larger thing. They have in downtown, their downtown police force is 10 officers, and there's a downtown captain. It's not like Sam. That captain's downtown too. That's the only thing that captain does. So everything's much larger. And so we have to figure out how to scale it economically down to what we can do. So part of our grant is kind of focused on the area. We start with LTD, and we start with that area down there. And the eligibility is quality of life crime. We do not deal with assaults. We do not deal with assaults on bus drivers. We do not deal with violence. We do not deal with that kind of situation. That is not an appropriate thing for this kind of a therapeutic problem-solving court. So initially, a person commits an offense in that area. They are then, and it's a quality of life offense, then they become eligible for the community court.
And then we'll show you some photographs of what the court process looks like, which includes the referral, the needs assessments, and so forth. For the sake of time, I'm going to push us through a little bit faster than normal. And just to want to highlight sanctions and incentives. There are sanctions and there are incentives. One of the examples of incentives that we saw is the graduation ceremonies that they have. Just the mere fact that the judge gets down to their level and shakes their hands and say, "I'm proud of you." To us, that may be like, okay. But to some of the folks that we deal with who suffer from self-esteem, who don't have any confidence, who are living on the street, that's a big deal. When you have a judge that comes out and says, "Thank you." It's that kind of a court. And I mentioned the graduation part. So it all starts out at the public library or the venue. Their public library is located directly across from their Nordstrom. And initially, guess what happened with Nordstrom? They did not want anything to do with this. So they fought and says, "No, we don't want this." And but things have turned around, and we don't have people camping out in front of Nordstrom and blocking traffic. It's a very pleasant area to walk. What happens is as people walk in, you'll see that they've got tables set up. We're not exactly sure what ours is going to look like, but it'll be a variation of that in our public library. And they get greeted. And there's one particular young lady, when we're talking about volunteers, that judge got a chance to meet. Would you mind talking about her?
Well, they have people who have gone through this court, and then they come back as volunteers. And this particular young woman had a serious meth problem. But through the help of the court, she was able to deal with it. So she, for instance, goes out there and walks up and down the line, and she can tell who has a meth problem. And she goes, "Hey, I know what you feel like. I know what you're facing. I was once there too. Just get into this court system. Just try what these people are trying to do. They're going to try to help you, and you can get out of it just like I did." So you have different people who come back. Could be alcohol, could be mental health, could be all kinds of different things that people come back and want to share with the potential people here their successes, and that I think is the best salesman. We're all salesmen in this deal. I mean, the prosecutor's a salesman, the defense attorney's a salesman, the judge is a salesman, all the providers are salesmen, the volunteers are salesmen. We're all like, yes, do it. So when you talk about small successes, you have those people that come to court drunk. I mean, I've seen a few of them. And so let's assume that person wanders in the first day that they're supposed to be here dead drunk. Let's assume that you ask them, please, when you come back next week, they come back every week, please don't be drunk. They come back sober, that's a big deal. That's a thank you, good for you, nice step, let's keep going. That's what we're talking about.
And in addition to being salesmen, mentors, champions, with the level of excitement that we saw, literally everybody took the time at every level to mentor these folks and be there for them, and it makes a difference. It's kind of a one-stopping shopping center, which is a system that we're going to have in place, where after they go through the court, and Judge will talk to you about what the court looks like, they come back into this room, and I talked about volunteers. Some of the people that you see there at those tables, some are volunteers, like the elderly couple that you see right there. They're retired, and they collect glasses. And they come in with these prescription glasses. It might be a little illegal, but they got a little optometry shop going on. And they just, go, hey, try these glasses on. You need a pair of glasses? I got glasses for you, or what have you. Sweetest people you'll ever meet. And then they've got tables for DMV. And people would go, well, why would I want to have DMV out there? Well, when somebody lives out on the street and they're homeless, it's quite often they lose their identification cards, their driver's license, and so forth. And then they don't have a bus pass to go over to DMV and get their ID. And if you don't have your ID, what happens? You got other issues. So DMV's got a shop out there to try to help them get their ID card. In other words, you get in there all the way from the housing to advocates to what have you. People come in and they get a chance to connect with them and sit down and have a conversation. The courtroom, that's Judge Logan, who is the presiding judge. And she's the champion, just like Judge Allen is for us here. And the reason why we have that photo there for you is because she goes to the chalkboard and she puts this on the chalkboard every time. If you could make one step towards a different direction, where would you go? Now, I would venture to bet that Judge Logan has got enough money in her budget to print something like that and put it on the wall, but she doesn't. She takes the time to write that down. She takes the time to meet people face to face, and she's been a champion for him, just like Judge Allen. So the courtroom procedure, Judge, can you talk a little bit about that?
So let me walk you through what a defendant does in Spokane, and it's going to be very similar here. You are given a citation for a quality of life kind of offense. You are required to appear on Friday. Every Friday the court will be, and also it'll be at the library. So you're given that you have a citation, you come down to court, you go through security, you come in here. The people closest in the picture are doing a needs assessment, a needs and a risk assessment. As I said, they use the probation officer. We're going to have a case manager. That case manager is going to be huge in our program, because not only are they going to do that, but they're also going to assign people to community service, which is the sanction part of this, the accountability part of this. And they have to do at least 2 hours of community service every week that they're in the program. You have the needs assessment, and as a result of that assessment and your needs, you're either in the court for 4 consecutive court dates, or 8 or 12, depending on your needs. So if you've had a bar fight down in the, or not a fight, but a dispute, so shall we say, in the Bermuda Triangle, and you're a college student, you're probably one of the 4 weak kinds of people, and you get some alcohol education, and you get some community service, and that's one kind of situation. But if you're in crisis, you're going to be one of the 12-week people. So you get the evaluation. You go over and meet with your court-appointed attorney. It looks like chaos, but it's really organized chaos. They go over and meet with their court-appointed attorney, who says to them, you have an option. You can go to the regular court, or you can stay here and get your case dismissed, but more importantly, you'll get some serious help. You make that decision, you go in front of the judge. Mary Logan is not there right now, but she just comes in and sits by the flag. There's no all rise, there's no elevated bench. No, this is by design. This is her design to bring the court down, to not have it be an intimidating court. This court is not about intimidation. So that's why she took it out of the courthouse, and that's why she put it in the library. And that's what you want to do. The same thing with community service. We're going to have our own community service through Parks and Rec. We are not going to use the community service at the jail because it's at the jail. People don't want to go down to the jail. They don't have the money to pay for community service. Community service charges $25 if you have food stamps, $50 if you don't. And then you've got the whole transportation issue. How do you get to wherever community service is? So we need our own quick kind of community service. And when we have community service, we want that to be a connection to the community. So for instance, with the Parks and Rec thing, they're going to be working with volunteers. Hi, I'm Joe, I'm the volunteer, you're with me today, let's go do something. And so you feel more like you're part of the community. That's what we're trying to do, of course. And you do that on a weekly basis. If you take a life skills class, that certainly counts as community service. If you do anything that improves your situation, it improves the community situation, it counts as community service. We're not looking for a lot of hours, and we're not looking for strictly punitive kinds of community service. It isn't that way at all. And then when you're through with that process in the court, the volunteer takes you to the next room, which is right next door. So we have, as you know, in the library, you can separate Tyson from Bascom, and you can have 2 rooms there. So we're on a smaller scale. We'll have our providers in the room next door. You go in there. The volunteer walks you to the first person, introduces you, steps back, lets you deal with them, walks you to the second person, steps back, does that all the way through. Then you're through. Then, there's the big payoff. You get a big sack lunch when you leave. So, and that's not a small thing. I mean, it's a Gatorade, it's Apple. I mean, it's a healthy big sack lunch. Let me back up a little bit. If Julie Smith has a candidate for this, she can say to them, and they haven't committed an offense, go down to the court on Friday. You'll get a needs assessment for free. You'll get a connection to providers for free, and you'll get a lunch for free. You got nothing to lose. All this can do is help you. So we don't need to wait till somebody commits an offense in order to get in here. We're open to that. If somebody comes into the regular court and I see them, and boy, do I see them, I now have a way to refer them. I can say, okay, Friday, can you come back on Friday? Here's what we'll do for you. Come back to the court here. And I've had some really good candidates that are frankly excited about it. So that's the process. That process is repeated for the period of time that you're in court. When you graduate, it's a big deal. Things stop in the chaos thing, and the court announces that so-and-so has graduated. The prosecutor is a cheerleader. The prosecutor, Adam up there, is as enthusiastic as the defense attorney. He's congratulating him. They call him by his first name. it's just a whole different deal. So that's what happens.
It is a different deal. So we talked a little bit about data collection, and one of the things they talked to us about was making sure that we partner with a university, maybe a local university or not, to be able to help us identify whether or not we're successful, if we're making any changes, and they reiterated over and over again, this is not something that you're going to be able to evaluate in 3 months. And they told us people are going to be impatient with you. They're going to say, hey, how's it going? How come crime hasn't come down? How come we still see people trespassing in front of a business? Well, it's going to take a couple of years before we actually see the result of the program. And once the program goes, and they've seen reductions of that. Some lessons learned. As we went through this, we all kept notes. We met with different stakeholders, and some of the highlights of those lessons. First and foremost, they said start small, identify your core areas. We've done that. We know where we're going to start. Your top offenders. As you know, we use data-led policing as our business model. We know who our top offenders are by sight, by name. We know their first name, last name, and all of that. And we also know through our data-led policing program typically when they're going to be there, what places they are, and all of that. We can tap into that resource. Identifying organizations with high points of contact. We know the fire department, for example, see some of the very same clients that we see. They transport them to the university district or to the hospital. And of course, the net result of that is the cost that we all bear from those transports and so on. Partnership with a range of service providers. Judge Allen has been meeting with them. We've lost count of the number of constituents that he and others have met with, and so many people have been excited to help us out with this. One of the lessons that they kept reiterating, these are community members, not defendants. And we, in the criminal justice system, in the world of lawyerese, we call them defendant. That's how I was taught when I went through police academy. Suspects, defendants, and sometimes not so complimentary. But these are community members, and we have to lift them up and help them build that self-esteem. Ongoing education with the community. This is a part of that because it's going to require community support and buy-in and understanding. It's not going to be just Sam Camcor and Judge Allen or what have you being able to do this. We're going to need your support. Research partner, we talked a little bit about that. Being flexible. How many times have we heard that, Judge?
Yeah.
If they said over and over again, all the way from the judge to the police officers to the prosecutor, there is going to be speed bumps along the road, all the way from how are we going to set the chairs, what are we going to do with electricity, budget, you name it. We have to be flexible and we have to stay focused about the end goal, the big prize, and say, you know what, we're here for a common goal. Let's push through. Let's just look at these speed bumps, either go around them, go over them. Let's stay focused and not get discouraged. We've got to be flexible. And the other thing was making sure we use experienced and committed people. In other words, they told us, don't just grab a DA or a prosecutor. Don't just say, okay, if you're the captain of your police department doesn't have the buy-in, that's not going to work. If your prosecutor doesn't have the buy-in, it's not going to work. And it needs to be experienced people that are going to come in and to do this job. Otherwise, you don't put a law clerk assigned to this. And then, of course, top-level leadership. Without the council supports, your support, and everybody else, the program won't make it.
Well, if there was ever a community that's got all of those attributes and all of those parts and pieces, it's this community. I mean, you've got Pete Kearns and his team. You've got the court team that I'm talking about. You know John Reese is going to support it. I know the council is going to support it. The providers that we've met, people like these two, it's time, and its time has come, and if it can't happen here, I don't know where it's going to happen, that's for sure.
I think we have about, 3 minutes left for questions?
About 10. We only have a little time for questions, so yeah, if you want to wrap it up, that'd be great. You done?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so questions from commissioners. I got Claire, I got Edward, and I got Steve, and Scott.
Judge, first I just want to express my deep appreciation for your leadership on this project. I know you gave your court coordinator credit for bringing the idea to you to some extent, but you have really picked it up and made it live. And I'm very, very excited about this project, and just wanted to say that up front. That thank
Well,
you very much.
it's easy to do. It is. You know, when you see something that's that right, it's easy to do.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So I did have some questions. Some were kind of specific and some were general. One just a very practical one. Considering you want to use the library for this court, we have had some folks who may end up in this court who've been banned from the library. So I was wondering what the accommodation was going to be for that.
Well, the library's been very helpful, and that was also easy. All I had to do was to have our librarian call Spokane's librarian, and that was it. So they're going to allow, they're not going to maybe go into the library themselves. But it also brings up the bus. So I met with Frank Wilson from LTD, and Frank is a realistic guy. He's not thinking we're going to solve all of these problems in one fell swoop, but he's been thinking about it. So he says, okay, if there's somebody banned from the bus, and there are over 3,000 people that are banned from the use of the bus, and it's one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here is to get people back able to use the bus. He will give them a community court bus pass, and they can use the bus free for community court purposes, so we get them back there. If they make it through and they get the graduation, then all we have to do is tell them, and they'll immediately be reinstated to use the bus again. So I think the same thing will happen with the library.
Great. That's great to hear. And then I saw that being flexible was an important criteria, which I agree with this kind of process. You need to be flexible because it's dynamic and kind of iterative based on the individual circumstances. So how prescriptive do you think you will be, particularly in the beginning phases, on that geographical parameter and some of the other criteria?
That's a good question. I should have covered it. We start with the LTD thing. Within a week or two, we move to the library and probably LCC as well. And then I think Julie suggested a timeline shortly thereafter to move to, I'm thinking 8th. And when you move to 8th, the whole game changes. Then you've got the park blocks, you've got the stuff around Davis and so on. So then I think what I said to the court administrator today was we're going to pause at that point. By that point, we'll probably have bit off more than we can chew, and we're going to need to digest it and then move. Eventually, the idea is you do all of downtown as defined by the EPD map. That's where we want to go to.
And then maybe even beyond?
Well...
University District, Whitaker?
Yeah. Well, when you lose... your officer up on the university at the end of July, that whole game is going to change. That, having the university drop out on that was a really stupid thing, because when he leaves, if you're going to be on the street and you're going to, where would you like to be? You'd like to be up in the university area. You've got students, perhaps there's some naivety there, perhaps there's some loose change there. This is a much more fertile ground than downtown. And you don't see the traveler issue in the university area like we have. And let me just digress for a second. I don't know how this is going to help the traveler issue. Chris and I have talked about that. I don't know what the carrot is that I can offer the traveler. The carrot here is, you get a case dismissed, but that's not really the carrot. It's the help you really need and hopefully you want. And the problem with some of the traveler people is that's not really the case. Now, I think Julie could have some success there because I think she could ferret out some of the traveler people who would like to get out of that lifestyle, and hopefully she can send them down before there's any offense and just get them down there run through the needs assessment and get them hooked up with some help.
Yeah.
So I think there's some movement that way, but I don't know what we're going to do with those pit bulls.
And then we had a question at our public comment period at this meeting, wondering what kind of plans, or if there were any, to engage the broader community in either developing this court or reviewing it as it continues its work.
Well, there was a survey that Cheryl Stone had done for us, and I think that's going to be part of the presentation to the council next week. But that survey, but that was a survey when we still were looking at what happens after the exclusion zone goes away. So it does show the community has engaged, and it's part of a community court process is to engage the community. So not only do we see the providers like ROCS and people at St. Vincent de Paul and so on, but we also reach out to the community, to the chamber, to the downtown businesses, those things.
And I just had one more question.
We've got to all be in on this.
Well, yeah, and I do agree that engaging our service providers, engaging those volunteers, being down in the library, I mean, those are all ways that community is part of this process. Yeah. Being here at this meeting, speaking to these commissioners. And then my last question is kind of more out in the future, but you point out, I think quite rightly, that experienced and committed people in key roles is important to the success of this project. Yeah. I know you have plans to retire at some point, and so I just want to encourage all of you and your team, not encourage you to retire. No, that's not what I was going to say.
I work for, if you don't know, I work for the city council. He's my employer. This is my employer. So I've got one employer who wants me to retire.
No, stay as long as you want.
That's not what I said. I want to encourage you to be thinking ahead to succession and who are the experienced and committed people who are going to step into these various important roles, 4 or 5, 8 years from now. So that's my last comment.
Yep. We have 2 really great people that are waiting in the wings. Greg Gill's one of them here. Rosalind Lee's another one. They're the right people to jump in and take it further.
Thank you. Okay, Edward, Steve, and then Scott.
All right, so thanks, I appreciate it.
Edward, Steve, and Scott. Sorry, maybe I said it too lowly. Edward first, then Steve, and then Scott.
But if it's important, I'm happy to yield the floor.
My name.
I'd start first with some praise and a thank you. I was in the room in San Francisco when this project there started taking baby steps in 1990 or so. Working on social services in the Tenderloin.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they have their work.
And of course, one of the things that they ran into was the accountability, and are you just going to let these people off with a slap on the wrist? And that's a huge hurdle to get over with the public. So making this as open, getting as much media attention to it, put a Facebook page up on it, and have the graduation ceremonies on it. Just let people see how this works at all steps. Because otherwise there's a lot of suspicion about it.
Do that Facebook page.
Yeah, I'm on it.
The bodyguard Facebook page. But you've really, really put your finger on the fact that when people go through our present court system, they come out resentful. Even if they're found innocent, they come out resentful because of the nature of the experience. And they feel like it was all forced upon them. And force begets resistance. So some of them are going to go and act out because they didn't like the experience they were put through on that first experience in our standard courts. So the whole idea that people are not forced into this, that they volunteered to be in it, that they're encouraged and welcomed and praised and so on and so forth, does mean that they come out the other end thinking, those people actually treated me like a human being. So even the change in architecture I was impressed by. Bit of a student of the history of architecture, and we built our public buildings for thousands of years to make people feel small when they walked into them. That's why the judge has a great big bench up there, and a big white wig in some places. So that's excellent. I really love those small attentions to how people are going to experience this.
When you go to these conferences, the first thing they talk about is procedural justice, and what they mean is treating a person respectfully from the minute they walk into that building until they leave. So that part, I'll say we have done that for a very long time, and you can see people who are treated that way kind of go, whoa.
Yeah.
You can almost see a reaction, and when you address them appropriately, and you treat them respectfully, and you treat them fairly.
Yes.
We've tried to really minimize that pushback, that this is unfair kind of thing. But that's not enough. So that's what this court is for a long time we've done that, but there have been all of those people that have walked out of that courtroom and I've gone, okay, we treated them respectfully, we treated them fairly, they knew what the process was, the people at the front counter treated them great, but there's something else that we ought to be able to do.
They're not coming out of that experience feeling any more a part of the community.
That's right.
Than when they went in. So vandalism, that's not a big deal to them. So that belongs to some guy down the street. I don't care. I don't know him. So anything that this process does that makes people feel less like the whole community is against them, so why shouldn't I be against the whole community? Right. So the more we can give people that feeling of integration, that's great. That's going in the right direction. The one phrase that people tripped over a lot, I remember in the early days in San Francisco, was restorative justice.
Right.
And I did not hear that in your presentation, so I'm guessing that's still a buzz phrase?
No, it's still a buzz phrase, and it's still something that you want to look at. Restorative justice is great. It's hard to figure out how to do it in an economical way. So, for instance, I've talked to Chip Coker a number of times about a restorative justice program for theft, and essentially having merchants and so on come in and talk to somebody about the effect of the theft and on their employees and on the public and so on, so that people have a little broader perspective. We use restorative justice through the university as it relates to alcohol-related madness in the campus area, and it's been really, really successful. It's patterned after a program in Boulder that I read about and said we need to do the same thing here. Restorative justice is something that's definitely high on our list. I just don't see it yet in this particular connotation.
What struck me at the time was that there were people who balked at it, and then it seemed like that would be really an appealing thing to people in the community who want to see some justice. Like, that guy broke my window.
Exactly.
What do I get? Do I get a window?
Right.
Do I get an apology? I'm not okay with that. So it seems like it's very volatile.
Graffiti's a classic example, for the person that, it's a perspective thing. What I was impressed about with the Boulder thing was the growth that I saw students, instead of going, I'm a student, I'm just here temporarily, if you don't like it, you ought to move out of the area. All of a sudden it did integrate them to being a citizen of the community. So I think there's a great place for restorative justice. We do it, we just don't do it enough.
Got it. Okay. The other thing that I heard you mention was the frequent flyers. And every city, if they're smart, has their database of the people who are costing the most money in ambulance rides, ER visits.
We have a list.
Involuntary admissions, so on and so forth. What's the rate in which other cities are making a dent in that through this?
I don't know.
Do we have a way of
I do not know.
But we have hopes it'll make a difference here.
Yes.
I won't take up more time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. Steve, now.
All right, well, I'm pretty excited. I really, I think that there are really great possibilities in it, so I appreciate the efforts. The current process reminds me of at least one definition of insanity, kind of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And
Except you finally get to the point you don't expect a different result.
Yeah. Well,
that's when you go, wait a minute, we got to do something different.
So I think, as you said, if you can get to the root of why this is occurring and maybe resolve same, then maybe you would get a different result. So I feel like that's part of the process, and I appreciate that. And I like the respectful and the collaborative approach. It takes multiple people working in concert to make that happen. I think that's great. And really, to the council, maybe we can get Judge Allison golden handcuffs and keep him around a while. But I was curious, you mentioned quality of life crime.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what that means.
Disorderly conduct, drinking in public, drug use in public, trespass. What else, Sam? What else do you think about?
Those are the ones we're starting with. it's not going to include assaults or some of the other stuff.
That was one of the concerns that Frank Wilson had for LTD, because there's an ordinance about interfering with public transportation, and it has 4 parts, and the parts are trespass, disorderly conduct, I can't remember the other one, and then there's basically assault. And what he was concerned about is, are you going to have this process? The bus driver gets assaulted by somebody. No, the answer is no. They go to what Spokane calls the Alpha Court. That's,
So last question is, I've led a number of projects, and I know like you're ready for this to happen yesterday, but there's lots of parts and pieces. There's things you don't even know yet that you'll discover. But I'm curious, you were hoping for July, and now that date's kind of pushed back. What is your kind of realistic?
It's the 1st of September. It will happen on the 1st of September. Our grant starts the 1st of July, which is what's really slowed me down, because that allows us to hire that officer, that case manager, who's going to do the assessment, who's going to sign and monitor the community service, who's going to get reports from the provider for the defense attorney, the judge, and the prosecutor when they come back. And hopefully it's a good report. If it isn't, what do we do about it? That kind of thing. What we don't have, I haven't really addressed it other than the comment about the downtown thing. We don't have the kind of money that you'd like to have to do this. You've got an underfunded prosecutor's office. You've only got 5 people downtown. Sam Kamkar's not the only, that's not the only thing he does. You've got defense attorney cost issues and so on. In Spokane, what they do is they're assigned to that court, and the other 4 days that they're not in court, they're working on that person's case. So, for instance, the prosecutor and the defense attorney will say, okay, let's go over to the housing place. So they've got a low-income housing. So they go over there together and go see where the defendants are, how they're living, how they're doing, and they make these visits, these house visits, things like that, and they have continual conferences with the providers and so on. We don't have that. We've got to figure out how to do it smarter.
Continuous engagement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's just that connection to people like the ones you're going to hear from here, Roxanne and so on. They're the people that do the heavy lifting. It's just, we've never had that bridge to them, that immediate bridge to them. So, that's what it's about.
Okay, Steve, I have Scott, and then I have Jim, Bill, Edward LeGlone, and Terry.
Thanks for all the hard work on that. It's a pretty exciting program. Any gaps that you see now, or any additional resources that just haven't been filled in completely yet, or that you foresee in the immediate future as you expand the area?
Well, I think, I don't know. It's really hard to know. When Spokane started, they didn't know if anybody was going to show up. 5 people showed up the first day. Now they serve 1,000 people a year. And 1,000 people. What's important to understand is you're taking a little piece of the court pie, a piece that we've become very adept at handling quickly. You get a citation for open container, the prosecutor takes a look at it, decides the file is a violation, you come into court, I impose a fine, the fine goes to collection, done. I mean, we're talking 10 minutes, maybe for everybody, including checking in and so on. Well, now, that same person may be coming back 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and touching base with their court-appointed attorney every time, touching base with the court, touching base with the case manager, and so on. So you've taken this little piece of the pie and made it much bigger. So there isn't any room in our budget for this. If we hadn't gotten that $200,000 grant, I don't know. I mean, I think we had a willing counsel and a willing manager and so on, and a willing police chief, but the city doesn't have a lot of dough right now, except Chris does. Chris is that's what he tells me. He tells me about all these grants. But and I think we were told for a long time that we shouldn't try to make the effort to get grants. I don't know where that came from. It just became embedded in our DNA, and that's not the case. And so we're looking for more grants.
Thanks.
Well, kind of what you just commented on was some one of the questions I was going to ask, so I'll ask that one first. Obviously, you have the $200,000 grant to begin with. It still sounds like there's, at least going into the future, you can't always count on grant money. Do you know where where you'll go once the grant money has been used up, where you think you'll be able to get funding to continue to support this?
That's a 2-year grant, so no, I think right now we're enmeshed in trying to get this thing started and get it going. And I know that there's some money in the budget that John's put in the budget for community court. The grant's going to cover that person. It's going to cover bus tokens. It's going to cover vests for the community service sort of thing. It's going to cover a lot of hard costs like that. But it's not going to cover the increased judicial expense, the defense expense, the prosecution expense, and those are already right there. So I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. I know you've got a little bit of time, but that time comes back.
Well, and it's, I'm tasked not just doing this court, but the regular court that we have. I keep saying we need more prosecutorial resources. When you have 2.5 FTEs in Eugene for somebody, and you have 10 in Spokane, okay, they have twice as many cases, probably because they have that many, but we ought to have 5, and we don't. So that means you get into backlog. It means that they're dealing with cases much too quickly. It's just not a good situation. So, not only do I want to get this fixed, but I want to get the regular court fixed somehow.
And hopefully this court will also keep some of the continuing frequent flyers from coming through all the time. So that should hopefully reduce the court load. And hopefully that will be seen. And just because it's starting to reduce the court load, I'm hoping the funds don't get taken away, because I know that happens a lot too. You start seeing something, maybe you're not having as many people come into court, so we don't need as many judges or attorneys or something, whereas the reason that it's working is because you have those people there. You take them away and you're going to be back in the same boat again. The other question I had was about, and I'm glad you really recognize that it's going to take 2 years to really see if this is going to be a good program that's working and that's being what you want to do. How do you think you have the support? I know you have the $200,000 for 2 years, but do you feel you have the support from all of the other people that are going to initially? There's a lot of initial goodwill, say, hey, we want to do this, we want to do this. Do you really feel that people are going to understand that you're in this for at least 2 years before you're really going to be able to show the results? Do you feel good about that?
People. Yeah, because the first reaction is enthusiasm and full support, and it's been that way. I haven't hit a roadblock yet, but I do try to say, hey, we need to be realistic here. It's going to take time, and some of these things are going to take a lot of effort for little gains. We have to try it. It's the right thing to do, but we don't know, how successful it'll be. I think it'll be successful. If this isn't successful, I've wasted a career.
Well, I think it's great. I'm just hoping that the people will understand and give you the time and not be pushing for. We want to see we want to see everything right now.
Right. I don't want somebody to come up to me in a year and say, well, downtown kind of looks the same as it did a year ago. What's going on with this little court of yours? I mean, it could happen. Even better not.
I'd like to caution us, we're 15 minutes into the next item on the agenda, so please try to keep your questions brief. We can move on to the next item on the agenda. And I have Bill, and then Edward, and then Sarah.
And I'll try to be brief, but your last comment is a perfect segue into what I want to add. First of all, I'll start out, I think it's great. I think that, these kind of programs, we have to try, we have to do, and you guys have done great work in trying to put this together. The thing that I'm going to ask you is that, how do I go out and convince people this is the right thing. Because what I'm seeing here, I don't see results. I don't, you keep talking about, Spokane, they're only in their 2.5 years. They really don't have measurable results. How do we pick LTD when everybody's going to ask me when they see me, well, why aren't the park blocks part of this initial piece? Why aren't we just focused on them? So I'm asking for help because I do believe what you're doing is good, but I want to be able to convince. I work downtown. I have all these people talk to me all the time about, well, why aren't you doing something, Bill? Why aren't they doing something about all this stuff? So help me with that. Help me with that piece right now as we roll this out.
So is your question, why this location? Why start here?
A little bit, because people will ask, why do we do LTD? I mean, is there that many problems when really it's the park blocks and Kesey Square and 8th and Olive, or Broadway and Olive?
But
those are the
think
problems.
about how much more passive those are. And if you go down to the bus, if you're at the bus area and the library, you see way more strange behavior than you do people who are sitting and lying on the sidewalk with pit bulls. I mean, that's been my view of it anyway. But in terms of why we did it, that was the way the grant worked. The grant, we could target a small specific area, and we didn't try to say we were going to do all of downtown initially. And so I think that was one of the appealing things, and the idea of getting people back on the bus and getting them able to look for a job and able to get to treatment and able to go to community service or whatever it might be. That's a reason that we started there. And that is a hub. I'll let Sam deal with his perceptions. It's a good question.
Just in terms of results, they have seen a 38% reduction in crime, but they weren't prepared to have us quote them on that per se, because they're in the middle of their studies. So when we spoke to their police department and their crime stats and so on, they are seeing measurable successes. They are seeing results. But they were careful about that, just because the study hasn't been published yet. So we're being conscientious.
So, and I just bring these up because I think that's really what we're going to hear in this. As you talk about, we got to have patience. We have to convince people up front to be patient. I think that's going to be one of our issues with this program, because right now people are already asking for results. And I think this could be a good answer for a lot of that, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Well, then there was the exclusion zone. How well did that work? And the people that I saw that violated the exclusion zone had serious mental health issues generally. Those were the people who kept coming back and acting crazy. And so on the exclusion zone, I don't think really dealt with that kind of problem. And just to exclude somebody and push them to Springfield or push them somewhere else, I don't think anybody ever really felt great about that as a solution. I didn't.
Thank you.
All right, I'll try to be brief. So first of all, thank you. I, in my real life, work for LTD, and I've spoken with Frank a number of times about this. And you came and presented to our board as well.
Right.
And I know that our board is excited about that. So two specific questions that I've got. So part of the work the Human Rights Commission has been working on really closely with council has been on the adoption of a housing first model for dealing with the unhoused in Eugene. We're clear that that's the policy we want. I think we're less clear on how we're going to do it.
Sure.
But as that starts to come online, is there a good opportunity for a link up between housing first and the community court model? Because I think a number of the folks who you'll see that come through this, my suspicion at least, is that they'll be unhoused or struggling with housing issues.
No doubt. No, and that's another thing that Spokane has. They think they don't have much low-income housing or that kind of. They have a ton compared to what we do. I mean, they have apartment houses. That's these. The defense attorney and the prosecutor go to the apartment house that's full of community court defendants.
Okay, cool. Well, so hopefully as we figure that out, counselors, it would be great.
We see that all the time. If somebody can, if you can get them on their meds and you can get them housed, totally different game.
And then the other question I have, and it's similar to what Bill's question was about, is how many folks are we anticipating seeing come through this? And do we have any chance to predict what potential cost savings to the system might be by doing that?
Well, you're going to eliminate a lot of warrants, and officers spending time taking people to jail, and jail booking them in, and jail releasing them, and then them not showing up, and then issuing a warrant to the court, and then the police officer picks them up on the warrant, and here we go. So, there's going to be, that's not really for me to do, but I know that that's data that's important. So we'll gather that data. And part of the data will be how many of these people did connect with and follow up with the providers. I mean, to me, that's the best data is, did this really work? Did you really connect them? And did they follow through on it? That's the data that I'm going to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yes. I just had a quick question about Spokane's experience with when they do the needs assessment.
Yeah.
I'm imagining that a great many of them needed mental health referrals. Was their mental health facilities and the budgets in those facilities able to handle? Because it must have constituted an increase.
They're weak on their mental health. They're weaker on mental health than we are. We have a mental health court. We have it because the then district attorney didn't want to do it in circuit court, and circuit court didn't want to do it. So we were more than happy to take it on and do it. But we have a mental health court. They do not have one in Spokane. They have mental health care providers, but that's their weakness. They don't
So
have.
we might be better.
Yeah, I think I do, and I think that that's one thing that the Oregon Health Plan has really helped us with. And one of the things that we'll do, and one of the things that Whitebird does, and one of the things that Roxanne does, and so on, is to connect people to the Oregon Health Plan, and that just changes the whole game. All of a sudden, you've got a paying customer, and that makes such a difference.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for coming tonight and enlightening us. I really got a lot out of this tonight, and I'm so much more pleased with the way we're headed with it, because I completely understand the burden and the load that the police officers have to deal with, especially with jail always being full and not being able to constant, like you said, rotating. So I thank you both for coming tonight and giving us this update, and I wish you great success with it.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to listen.
Okay, we're going to move into the next item of our agenda, which is the right-of-way camping, private camping, and public forum and discussion that will go with this. I'm going to ask the people from Safe Business to call. Would you join us at the table, please? Sure. Since you administrate the program, it would be great to have you join us in the discussion. And I'm going to let Chief Kern start out with explanation of how the program is working right now.
Sure. Kyle Sergeant Williams was was one of the program coordinators for us. Do you mind if he joined us?
Absolutely. And Ron, I believe
Ron, are you the program coordinator now? Yes. Okay. I think Lieutenant.
Yeah. Come on, join us up here to speak.
Who's going to open it?
Yeah. Before we start, Chief, I think Carter handed out some of the forms that, if anybody's interested in speaking at the public forum, please fill that out and hand it up here, and we'll get you on in the queue. Okay? Thank you.
Just a quick history of the program. A long time ago, when homelessness became more prevalent in Eugene and we saw more people camping on the street, then City Council asked us to find a way to use the resources we have and the rules that we have at our disposal in order to accommodate the conditions in as humane way as possible. So we came up with this process that you're about to hear about, and it's been in place for probably 15 or 20 years. And it's imperfect, but it is better than some of the alternatives. And so the idea is that we give folks who are camping on the street an opportunity to learn that what they're doing is not lawful and to look for another place to be. We do it in a way that addresses the fears and the concerns of the neighbors who see homeless people in there living on the street in front of their house or near their homes, and also introduces the potential for services to the people that are there. So I'll allow the folks who are here to tick through what the process looks like today.
Everybody jumping once.
Draws.
Yeah. So we get complaints in from a number of sources. The way that we first try to resolve this is sending it to St. Vincent's to have them do an outreach, see if there's a social service that we can provide to the person camping illegally. There are a number of permitted locations throughout the city that they administer toilet facilities, trash, etc. And I believe you said there was 43. So there is some capacity there. Some of the problems that people face getting in there is they don't allow dogs, and so that's sometimes a barrier for people to get into it. On average, there's probably 75 to 100 people that just choose not to accept any services, and those are the people that we see around the community that are kind of the repeat people. So if Keith can't resolve the situation one way or the other, he'll send it back to us, and then we take the enforcement action, which can be citations and or towing a vehicle at some point down the road as we go through the process of trying to get some compliance out of this person. And that is, in a nutshell, the program.
Okay. Thank you. This opportunity was brought up for everybody that might have questions about the administration. I know we're in a situation now where the contract is due, I believe, next month, July?
August 31st expires.
Okay. So this would be a good time if people have suggestions or questions that they think need addressing, to bring that up so that the city can negotiate if need be any changes. So I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to questions.
Can we have them introduce themselves?
I'm sorry.
Oh, certainly. Sorry. Ron, would you start with an introduction?
Yeah, Ron Tenseth, I'm a lieutenant with the police department.
Roxanne O'Brien, St. Vincent and Paul, the Lynn Home Center on Highway 99.
Keith Heath, St. Vincent de Paul, I'm the day manager, and also the overnight parking coordinator.
I'm Sergeant Kyle Williams, and I've been EPD's contact for the camping program for about 2 years now. And Keith and I work together as we do our best to try to keep up and respond to the camping complaints as they come in.
Okay. So questions. So Bill and then Marty. Yeah, I just want to get our commission, and then we'll get the public.
Keith, this is a little too. Could you explain what you do or what your group does when they get a complaint for somebody camping on the street?
Yes.
And kind of walk us through all the steps that you do and follow up.
Okay, so on a daily basis, I get a log from the police department. These complaints are call generated. So I call and say, hey, there's a guy in front of my house in his motorhome. I get it, I go out and try to make contact with this person. After 4 attempts, if I'm not able to make contact with them, then I kick it back to EPD and then go out after hours. Because a lot of these folks out here know my hours and make themselves unavailable. See me coming, I guess, I don't know. So then I kick it back to EPD and then they go out after hours. If I do make contact, then I hand them a notice, and the notice says you have 24 hours to remove yourself. I also educate them that if they're caught anywhere else in the city in the next 30 days, they're willful. And willful means that the police will come out to site and tow you. And I get their name and birthday. So when there's willful, I go back in 24 hours. If they're still there, I send it to Sergeant Williams and Lieutenant Tenson, and then they go out and site and tow. I also have an opportunity to educate them on coming over to the service station to get their daily needs met. Showers, laundry, food, clothing vouchers, letters for ID, letters for the library, We have a veterans program there, so when they come in the back, we can direct them to different other resources that we have in the building, and if not in our building, then we can direct them to other services here in Eugene. So, again, if they're not there, I tried 4 times and I can't get back to you. If they're there, we have a conversation, and pretty much I know them all anyway, because either they're coming to the service station, or I've been chasing them around the city. And so the other part of that is that we have a legal camping program. So we tell them you can call in on Mondays and Thursdays, get on the list. When your turn comes up, we call you, tell you where it's at, drug test you, and then get you situated.
I'm just going to ask a couple quick, just to follow up with this. So do a lot of people not pick to go into the legal camping sites that you have because of the drug testing or because of other things that they don't want to?
We just started the drug testing maybe last July because of a few incidents. But no, maybe 90% of the people still come. They're calling in. It's just I think the problem is the wait in the list and funding for more spots.
And one last question. How many spots do you think the city needs to address most of these illegal
spots? As many as we can get.
I mean, are we seeing 50 people out there that are on the waiting list, or 60? I mean,
well, right now we're at 42, and that's in Eugene and Springfield.
Right.
So if you take off the Springfield, there's probably 7 or 8 in Springfield and the rest are Eugene. So if we can bump it up to 75, that'd be good.
But that constitutes many slots within those addresses. So that's how many addresses we have, but there might be 3 to 5 slots at each address.
Okay. So really it's more like 100 slots or over 100 slots.
Yes.
Right now you have, and you need probably 30, 40 more. I'm just looking for a number. I'm not, just to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about for me.
Yes.
How many people are on the waiting list usually?
Anywhere from 75, 100 maybe, at any given time. And what happens is, if you call in Mondays and Thursdays, you stay here. If you don't, and then I get people coming, well, where am I at on the list? So when the spots become available, I have Roxanne run a report, and then I just go down that list.
So the more they call, the higher they stay.
Yeah. So the city spots are the ones that we rotate, and then we have private spots. So we have 4 spots over at Alton Baker Park, 4 spots over at the Science Factory, or what we call West Tech. So those are the ones where we don't put any dogs, and then we drug test them, and then every 30 days somebody goes in. So once you get to the place, it's 90 days that you get to stay there unless you do something and you get kicked out. And then we have businesses. Somebody may come and say, hey, I got a junkyard here and I need night security. So our client gets a safe place to park, and the business owner will get free security. And so we have spots in place where we've had people out there maybe 5 years. So when we find a business and a client that works together, we like that.
Probably the big reason it's a success as it is we match the spot with the person. We know the people, and that's the key to the program is when you know this person would do well out in an industrial area and not at a church, that's the whole key.
And then calling them Monday and Thursdays, and they're coming to the service station, it gives us an opportunity to observe them and their behavior and kind of figure out what would be best for them.
And just calling in, getting on the list is a little bit of responsibility, so we know if they can do that minor bit of maintaining, calling in twice a week, then we know that, they're willing to put in forth some effort to maintain themselves on the list.
Here's my queue. I have Marty, Edward G., myself, Raquel, and Edward M.
I'll pass Bill.
And Madam Clerk. You pass it, okay? Edward G.
What about public comment?
Yeah, we'll get to you guys, yeah.
I won't forget you.
Hopefully, we'll get through the board pretty quickly here.
Back in the early 90s, I was with the assistant project manager for San Francisco's first public homeless shelter, 600 beds. And on about day one, we discovered we had a problem with the dogs, which was the first policy was we can't have dogs in the building. Well, that ended up with 50 people, families, and so on, standing out in the rain in the parking lot with their dogs. That didn't work out too well. And then someone pointed out this sticky fact. I'm disabled. This is my service dog. You cannot keep my service dog out. How do we handle that here in Eugene?
If it's a service animal, then we allow them. And we base that off of the animal's behavior. We get people to come into the service station. Oh, it's my service animal, and the dog is sniffing people and trying to eat off the table, and that's not a service animal.
So we base it totally off of behavior because we have that problem a lot. 99% of the people that have dogs, they're not service animals.
Yep.
So, but if they want to act like a service animal, they're welcome in, which is usually 98% of them aren't. So we'll videotape them and just put that on file.
That's very good. That's a better answer than we had on day one, frankly.
And they all know the laws too, because they'll tell you, you can't ask for this and you can't ask for that.
That hasn't changed.
But as long as they behave, we don't care, but that's very few of them, so.
I know that there are members of the public who are unhappy that people who are so poor they're camping in their vehicle are being rousted. And I also know the flip side of that is that some of those people, especially in the smaller vehicles, they're camping in a residential neighborhood. Where are they using the bathroom? And that's something that a lot of people don't think about when they look at this, is that this is sometimes a public health problem. And I don't know if you include that in your PR so people can understand why you might want to move these folks to some place where they're closer to a bathroom for the benefit of all. Anyway, that's more of a comment.
So in our legal camping spots, of course, we have restrooms, porta potties and garbage, but.
I really like the placing of them in the different lots for security and so on, because that gives people a sense of feeling useful as opposed to just warehouse.
And some jobs just come out of that.
Yeah, excellent. That's. I wish we'd thought of that, say, 15 years ago in another city. Thank you.
I'm next, but I'm going to suspend my time to allow the public to come up. Has anybody that has a sheet that they filled out to speak, can you come up with those, please? And we'll call you.
Can I ask a question to prompt? So on okay time to do that?
Yeah.
We get a lot of complaints from people who say they call many times to the police department and they still see the same problem there. So why would that happen?
About the illegal camping?
Yeah, illegal camping.
Response time?
There's a process problem, sir, and it's a systems design problem that we're working to address.
Could you go ahead and explain it if you would?
Yeah, from the time we get an input of a complaint, they can come from many sources. The time that it takes to get referred to, say, Benson, and then for them to get out on it can be several days. Then by the time Keith gets to the end of his period, then he can get back to us, can be several more days. It's reliant upon Kyle and I to be here at work. We have days off. If that happens, it can be 10, 15 days before we actually send a police officer to deal with this. Most people will be tolerant for a day or two, but 15 is not acceptable. And that's something that we're working to try and shrink down, maybe come up with a different way to it. Maybe modeled after like Public Works mobile maintenance system or a variant of that. And we're hoping that we'll be able to work through that as the new contract comes in.
And when there's really issues, they go out right away. I'll let them know when they send somebody right out.
The final piece of that that's a struggle is that the officers that are responding to these are volunteer officers who are willing to do this. And so every now and again I will send out a request to the department for who's willing to follow up on these. And it's not usually a very big pool. So we have a few officers that I will send the complaints to, and then it's dependent on their ability to get out there in between all their other calls, which I know just recently we have struggled, they have struggled to be able to keep up and get to these amongst the other calls for service that they're being called to. Right now, the current volunteers are on their busiest shift of 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so that's an issue that Lieutenant Tinseth and I've been talking about. It's just been difficult. It's just been difficult to be able to get out time-wise.
And we don't go later than that. We don't go with people in the middle of the night. It's the type of thing that we do during our day and early swing shift hours.
And that creates some unique challenges. We will, on a very rare occasion, send somebody out late, and that's if it's been repeated contacts where they're claiming that they're just in the park during the day, but we're continuing to get complaints that they're there at night. We will, on a very rare occasion, under very specific circumstances, send a later officer, because otherwise we just can't prove what they are or aren't doing. And so, but otherwise, yeah, we stick to the daytime hours. But that creates the debate or having to prove that they truly are camping where they're at. And so it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there that we've got to balance.
Because I just got here all the time. I didn't spend the night here.
Oh yeah, especially with Keith, it seems like when we show up, we can do more digging to really start laying in the facts to try to be able to build enough of a case to be able to take some enforcement or to let them know that the game's over. Keith doesn't really have that ability to really dig in and question in the way that we're able to. So it's more difficult for him to get to the root.
I just wanted to add, from having looked at this last year, that the code provides enhanced penalties if someone has received, if the police have received a complaint on someone within 30 days of the notification of that first warning. And by the time all of these things happen, that 30 days can lapse. So then, even if it's a second complaint, on paper, it's a first complaint because it's not within 30 days. So it starts over again as a first warning. So if they get a first warning and the 30 days lapses, you get another first warning and that 30 days lapses. That could go on far longer than anyone's comfortable. And that's in the code. That's in the municipal code.
And sometimes they get cited and towed, and they don't get the vehicle back, and you look up and they got another one. So, and then that process starts over again.
And there's a couple programs at St. Vinny's through Lane County that we just, it's a pilot program, 2 of them last year. One of them was Dusk to Dawn, where 20 people in a tent, and this year they want us to submit a proposal to triple that. But also the safe parking program, which was 5 spots where they could just pull in at night and be out by 7 in the morning. That worked extremely well, so they're thinking about tripling it also.
And that helped with some of the overlay. So they're still waiting on the wait list, but they still have an opportunity to go somewhere at night and not to be worried about just staying out on the street.
Okay, so I appreciate the Commissioner's indulgence. When I come back, I have myself and Cal, Edward, and Claire in the queue, and we'll get to your questions. We appreciate you holding them until we get the public accommodated. They may want to leave and they have time. It's getting late, so I didn't realize we've gone so long. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Bill, who's going to call you up according to the corner of the paper. And if you'll take the chair over there in the corner that's empty, we'll be happy to hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak, and I will let you know when 20 seconds is left, and then I'll let you know when your time is up. And so our first speaker is Jessica C. Scream. Jessica, can I get you?
I would like, if there's anyone from Whitaker, to let them speak before I do, so I don't take time saying what they might want to say.
We didn't ask them to put that down. Is anyone from Whitaker here?
Yeah. Did you want to speak,
sir? Did you wish to speak to the
public forum?
Well, we find in the area that I'm involved in Whitaker,
generally that there's a difference
oh,
in...
So did you wish,
sorry.
did you wish to speak to the
Because we
public
need
forum?
to get
Sure.
a blue form from you. Can we get you to fill one
You
out?
need some identification?
I just need your name on there.
I see.
Just, we have to keep a record of who speaks to us.
Right,
so-
gotcha. I'll
Thank
give you that before I leave, all right?
Yep.
My name is Richard Kuski. I'm an ex-president of Community Council in Whitaker for more years than I'm going to admit. First off, I'd like to say that I think the quality of personnel that St. Vincent de Paul has working for them never ceases to amaze me. I really appreciate you guys working. I really have to say that. It's wonderful. We have a bit of a looser situation in Whitaker, some think, some don't, that allows people to basically stay in one spot for 3 days. That's the rule that we've been using as a community. And we've had success with that. And on the third day, someone comes and puts a note on their truck and or their car and they're gone. We are confronted with the issue of bathrooms constantly. And to the extent that some people have allowed people who are parking to use their own bathrooms during houses. So we kind of take a great deal of the parking that is essentially not, that there's room for anyplace else. We take it in Whitaker. And it's been very, very okay. I haven't heard of a problem except around the skate park. The skate park is basically not in Whitaker. It is and it isn't. It's its own country, nationality, system. And that's a whole different piece. And now that we've got that wonderful fence there, we're thinking of putting signs on it. If you've seen the wonderful fence underneath. We're not quite sure what we're going to do with that yet, but we'll find something to do with it. So we don't find ourselves at this point in any more of a survival mode regarding campers outside of the skateboard than we have in the past. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
So, Jessica, now, you can join us at the
Where do you
table.
want me to come?
Right over in the corner next to Sergeant
If
Williams.
you'd like to speak from there, that's okay.
Except the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'd like you here at the table.
We are, for the public, I need to say, we are recording this. It's required when we have a meeting that we record it, so it helps to have the microphone nearby.
Hi again. Again, I have way more than 3 minutes for it to say, so I realize I can't say it all here, and I'll have to find some other venue to communicate some things. First of all, I'm glad that Keith or Roxanne mentioned that when people are on the willful violator list, the list that they're on for 30 days, it's not just that they need to move just a few blocks away or even to another neighborhood. It's that they can't be anywhere in the city limits within that 30 days. And so, very much this raises the issue of so where are they supposed to go, because there aren't enough living spots. And of course, this overlaps so much with the Human Rights Commission's work on the criminalization, or whatever you want to call it, the issue of, there aren't enough places, legal, safe places for people to be in. So does that mean we just want to try to, shoo them out of the city? They have to go somewhere else. That's not good enough either. I wanted to, I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but the Whitaker neighborhood is really on my mind here. And like Richard, I'm a past president of the Whitaker Community Council too. And just thinking about this issue and from what I'm seeing on Facebook, if nowhere else, people are saying things different from what Richard's mentioning. And it just brings back all kinds of memories of when I was chair in that neighborhood, how challenging so many different situations are. And so apparently there are now a bunch of campers in, say, near the Bruns Market area or 3rd and Monroe, where and apparently there's a bunch of F users. So it brings up a whole bunch of issues among Whitaker people, which I see reflected there in the comments on Facebook, that, more issues than I can even mention, but they include the police don't respond to us. I'm glad for all the explanation of why it might take longer, but these people aren't apparently understanding that. Why aren't the police come? They won't come to Whitaker. They won't let this kind of stuff happen in other neighborhoods, but they let it happen in Whitaker. Then others saying, we don't want the police to come here. And then others saying, well, we should start vigilante stuff. Others saying, no, we don't want vigilante stuff. Some saying we want to just talk to them. Others saying they're meth heads, they're dangerous to talk to. Okay, my time's almost up. There's lots that can be done about this, needs to be done about this. And I will be in touch further with people like Claire and Carter and the chief about and you folks, about some next steps. Because it's really a public safety issue, not only for the community members who have houses, but also those who don't.
We really should differentiate between parking in Whitaker and drug dealing.
Okay, Richard, we can't just let you talk during the meeting. Thank you. You have to fill out a form to speak your 3 minutes. Thank you. So next one up we have is Randy Prince. Randy, join us at the table. Thank you.
Randy Prince from the Amazon Neighborhood Association, and also reporting from the Council of South Eugene Neighborhoods. It's kind of a new coalition of 4 neighborhoods of South Eugene friendly. The Sheena South Hills, as it used to be called, Crest Drive, Southeast neighbors, and us, Amazon, where I live, the smallest of those 4. We organized a little while ago to deal with issues that affected our area so we could be more effective. But there is some news here about possibly more legal campsites that neighborhood associations could help out with, because I'm hearing that the lack of that is part of the problem with illegal campsites. So even though I can't say, oh, we got the problem solved, maybe there's something that is relevant here. Now, I said we were formed, this council, and I did help form it on regional issues. You probably heard of us because we've been active on this zoning issue with South Willamette, and we had some success in lobbying for that. But we really mean it, anything that helps our area. And we plan to be working, we've already voted around smoke pollution and transportation issues. So back in April, one of our leading members, Heather Selecki from Southeast, said, let's work on the homeless issue. And that kind of sailed through, but of course, according to our structure, it has to go back to the neighborhoods. And there was some pushback from my neighbors, and I was kind of skeptical. So we didn't cause homelessness. We don't have gentrification. We don't even have a lot of homeless people there. How does that affect us? We didn't just form to just do social service work. We do like to do good things. And we also want to protect our neighbors. And, I myself had a suspicious guy who's camping out there. It's kind of scary and everything. I appreciate that there's, police to respond and be available. And we don't, in my neighborhood, I can tell you, we don't want big homeless camps taking up the public parks like Amazon and everything. That was a concern of ours. Anyway, there was discussions. We had another meeting on May 23rd, and we actually did come to agreement that we should be on this issue. And it's kind of like we'll do our part as neighborhoods. Us 4 neighborhoods, we will do our part to help provide for that. And that is to find spots for legal rest camping, because we have a connection to the neighbors. And we would like to preclude the kind of friction that develops when there isn't good communication. Some neighborhoods are more functional and have a very large participation, good information flow. Some are smaller, but we did make a commitment to try to find enough spots for 50, maybe even up to 100. These are like the parking lot spots, and we'll do what we can. And as neighborhood associations, we just have a different way to speak to people, because people know that we will look out for the nuisance issues and so on, but we also feel like everybody in the city has to pitch in. It's a citywide problem. So at this point, we are going to move forward with the Council of Southeast Neighborhoods with our task force to help you all, and we encourage you to stay in touch with us, and we want to stay in touch with you guys. You came up at the meeting, and that's my news this evening.
Thank you, Randy. next up, we have Rachel Latimer. Rachel, would you just take it, please?
First, thanks for involving the community in this. I know it's a process that everyone would like to see improved, and I know there's some frustrating aspects for people that deal with it most and then the residents of the city. So I'm really happy to see that everyone's trying to work together to come up with some better solutions. From a personal point of view, I lived in Jefferson Lakeside across from Toronto Morgan for 7 years, and almost weekly have people camped in front of my house, and for a very varied amount of time, from a week to 2 weeks to a month, or you start keeping track of people, you start keeping notes on your phone about who's in front of your house, and as you know, you see repeat offenders, and it's pretty unnerving to go to bed at night knowing there are people camped in front of your house, or to go to work knowing there could be people keeping track of your routines, or leaving your children home alone. It's really frustrating, and it's scary, and that's just the safety aspect of it. As someone spoke to earlier, there's also the public health aspect. Often people end up using front yards or driveways as bathrooms, and it's just it's a hard thing to wake up to. So I just encourage you to continue to refine this process, because I don't think it's quite there yet, as you guys probably know. So anything that you can do to speed up the response time and include the neighborhoods, because the neighborhoods really do want to help, and they're kind of your first line of response, I think, to this process. So I know I'm living in the Amazon area now, and I'm still seeing it, but to a lesser degree. So please reach out to us, because we do want to help, and we do want to see this process get better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so our last speaker, Leah Fisher, would you join us?
Thank you. I came here primarily to listen this evening. I'm glad that I did. But I just wanted to sort of reiterate the need for more sites. I work as a housing counselor at Catholic Community Services for a Housing First program, and I talk to a lot of homeless people. And my experience has been that the majority of people who I tell you have to get on a wait list to get into a parking program are going to say, oh, well, then it's not worth it. So I think it's likely that there may be 3 to 4 times as many people as you have on your wait list that are actually looking for a safe place to park. That's all I wanted to ask.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have anybody else that wants to speak that hasn't filled out a form yet? Turn it back over to you, Bob.
Thank you. Okay, back into the portion with the commissioners. I have myself, Raquel, Edward, and Claire. Okay. All right, so how this all started back in March, Bill and I had sat down and talked about our agenda and some of the things we needed to address, and it seemed like to be a public issue with the camping, and with all the publicity that it gets and with all the diverse opinions on it, we decided to put it on the agenda for the April meeting. And lo and behold, I was away for the first 2 weeks in April. Get an email while I was away from the neighborhood association fellow who was complaining about a camper that was parked up in his street for quite a while, and he wasn't getting any action. And all of a sudden, this repartee started between the rest of the neighbors and him. And there were some with him, there were some against him, and they were calling him mean-spirited for even calling the police, and all the different things that people get into when they get upset. So it was really good that we had picked that topic and decided to bring it up, because that's just a microcosm of what the rest of the city is like, all the neighborhoods. I mean, you're correct, I live in a friendly neighborhood, and we certainly don't have a great problem there, but I can understand why we would want to get involved with it. It's still our community, not just our neighborhood, that we are concerned with. So in keeping with that, one of the things that came out in the, and I asked this question last month, and we were going to get an answer, so I hope somebody knows. The gentleman said in his email that St. Vincent de Paul is telling people there's a minimum of 2 weeks response time to get to campers who are illegally camped on the street, so that's not true.
That's not
Okay.
true.
And the other thing was,
We just tell them to push them along.
Yeah.
That's
Go to another block.
so the other thing was, we're complaining that if they can't get notice to move,
It's not true.
that they'll never move. So if somebody wanted to thwart the system and they just didn't answer when you knock on the camper door, I mean, how many times do you come back and try? 4 times. And after that, what happens?
I send it back to the police department.
Okay. And if the police go and respond, I think I know the answer to this, but if you respond and they don't answer the door, how do you all handle that?
We knock louder.
So you don't just give up.
No, I have stood at a motorhome for 30 minutes banging on the door until somebody gets tired of hearing listening to my banging. It's pretty uncommon that there's actually somebody in there and they don't eventually come to the door.
Okay. Because
Or I come back over and over, and I can tell you, it's been that way. You catch them at a weak moment when they're outside or whatever. I've shined my flashlight in through the blinds, trying to see if you can at least try to get word that somebody's in there. You stop and listen for a minute, or see a movement, and then you can call that out and eventually wear them down to where they'll come and answer. So I've had a lot of one-way negotiations until they finally started talking or came out. But generally speaking, I think it's been pretty rare that I haven't eventually been able to get somebody to make contact with me.
So then I have the police question about posting notification, because I heard somebody say they find a notice on the vehicle, and well, if you never got them to answer, you guys don't leave a notice then, right? If you
We
can't
stopped doing it because they were saying you never got it.
Never got it, right.
So now I hand it to them, then we know when I get a name and a birthday, and they know I actually handed it to them.
Okay, and then so if you guys are, can you post it?
There are 2 different things that we have going on here. We have the illegal camping, where we have a notice that has information and phone numbers for some resources, and it talks about the illegal camping component. The other avenue that we have is just storage on the street. You're not allowed to just park a vehicle on the street forever. And so that is a sticker, the bright orange sticker that everybody's probably aware of, or bright yellow, I think some agencies have. And it says that this vehicle must move within 72 hours or it will be cited and towed for storage on the street. That is one where they only have to move to the next 100 block. So they only have to move the block to satisfy the needs of the storage on the street. And it doesn't do a whole lot to really satisfy this illegal camping, long-term camping, willful problem that we have in neighborhoods. So from a camping angle, we've avoided doing that until it gets to the point where we're just having a hard time making contact. And it's a problem for the neighborhood, and the neighbors are particularly upset about it. And I can assure you this is happening all over the city, because I've had a lot of long conversations with very upset people explaining the processes and what we're doing to slowly try to streamline the process. But we will use the notice to try to make kind of a final action to get things moved along.
Okay.
And so they really are kind of 2 different tracks.
Thank you, that clarifies a lot, and it helps me understand if a gentleman writes back, and I appreciate that. The other question I had was in relation to the parking that you guys provide at the different facilities. So I didn't hear, and I apologize if I didn't, how long is the list? If you want to get on the list, how long is the waiting period till you actually can get a slot? Is there a time?
Generally speaking, 30 to 60 days.
A lot depends on, do you have a dog? We have a lot of people that we know that have mental health disorders and whatever. That doesn't, preclude them from getting into a spot. But then we have certain spots that we know will work best for them. And so, the turnover in them is a lot longer. So we try to match the person with the spot, or if you have a dog, we know they don't allow them here, but we might there, so.
Okay. So, and the last question would be on the other end of that. If you have a space come open, that means somebody has to leave, correct? I mean, how long do people generally stay once they get a space? Is there a limit to how long they can stay on a lot where you've given them a space, or is there an average time?
If it's a private spot, then that's a month-to-month thing. If it's a city spot, then it's 90 days.
90 days, okay. So then they have to move. Okay, they have to go back on the list again and wait another 30 to 60 days.
A year.
And the idea is to get them into housing, get them out of there. So we do a coordinated entry at the day center where we rate them on many different things throughout their life, to maybe refer them to permanent supported housing, to regular low-income housing, to get them into our renters, our renters education program. So we're trying to, the goal is to get them out of their situation, which we do to many of them, but there's some that you're not going to be able to do that with. So.
Okay, and there's a long wait for Section 8 housing now, is that?
Yeah, I don't think I've referred anybody to Section 8. No, we have lots of other avenues. I mean, of course, St. Denis has low-income housing. We've just got many of them in. We're opening up a new one in Junction City, and so those wait lists are very, very, very short. So anytime we're building a new complex, it's a wait list in its own entity. It's not our big, long waiting list.
Okay.
So, we kind of case manage them and help them get on the way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That answered a lot. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have Raquel, Edward, M, and then Claire, and then Andrew.
Well, first, I think you does such a great job, and you guys appreciate all the work that you're doing, and wonderful. But the flip side of what I'm hearing here, when I heard from what people have said, it's very frustrating. I understand that, but what I'm hearing is that there's no place for these people to go. For a large number of them, there's a certain number of people who don't even qualify, and it just doesn't seem like personally, also, when I hear the police are spending their time knocking on the door for half an hour, I mean, I'd just rather you be spending your time catching criminals somehow, and then knocking on some homeless person's door. And you ask people to volunteer. I can imagine why they might not want that to be their priority during the day, to be out there knocking on somebody's door who doesn't have a place to stay. And it seems like that shouldn't be anybody's priority until we absolutely have a location to offer each person in the city, and not chasing them around the city every 30 days and saying, or you got to move out of the city for 30 days and you can come back in and then we'll chase you around again. That just doesn't sound right. And then last time we brought the subject up, you brought this up too, is, it's like, well, then we're going to tow your vehicle. Well, and then they're going to show up with some other vehicle the next day anyway. So that just, none of that sounds like a solution to me. It sounds like we need to have a solution first before we have an enforcement action. So I just wanted to lay that out there.
Am I able to make a response in between these?
Sure.
That might provide a little bit more information?
Yeah, we're supposed to be questioning, so obviously
Yes,
there should be an
I
answer
should
period.
have
Can you put that informative question?
Is there a
Yeah. So much of the issue comes around campers that stay in one place for too long. Not very many of these people we're getting complaints on people that have been there for 24 hours. This thing just showed up in my yard, and I want him out of here. That's not usually it. Usually it's, this thing's been here for a week, we've had enough, it's time for them to go. What I will say is that the enforcement action generally puts people back on alert to where they hopscotch and they move more and we get fewer complaints. Because most neighborhoods are somewhat, the areas that aren't the ones that are getting hit all the time. And we've got a few particular places, especially out in West Eugene, where it's the same block with a different motorhome every night of the week, or for a month, and then it's somebody else the next month. And so the enforcement action does have the effect of keeping people moving more and not wearing out their welcome. And so that is the one benefit of an impound, because it sends that message that they need to keep moving. And I've had very lengthy, for a long time I was doing a lot of the enforcement myself on it because it was difficult to get officers to do it, and I was tasked with the assignment. And I would have very lengthy conversations, and yet a conversation very rarely implored somebody to move or to keep moving. And while it's certainly a very imperfect system, and I don't know what the big answer is, the benefit that I have seen to the enforcement is to keep people moving so that they don't wear out that welcome.
Can I just add something onto that? There are folks in the town that are able to move around and stay under the radar, if you will, and go into neighborhoods and spend a night there, clean up their mess, or don't leave a mess, don't have company, and not loud noise and causing a disturbance.
Right, and I mean, I just to follow up on that, I mean, we're not talking about people who are causing a disturbance, a different criminal act that, obviously boards follow up, but, my question, I guess, is why are we doing this to people who are not causing a disturbance or peeing on the lawn or, doing things that obviously are disturbing to the neighborhood? I just don't see the point to spending our resources on that.
And I will say this, that, the safe parking program that I talked about, that was 5 spots in front of the Behavioral Health Center there on Martin Luther King. It's very, very cost effective. We just drive by in the morning, make sure everybody's gone. They're in at night. It's a place to park, bucks toilets, and garbage. And doesn't take a lot of money, but it's so sites like that, five spots here, 5 spots there, would really be a short-term solution. Of course, we want everybody in housing, but it's really, very cost-effective and a solution to them parking when they're not supposed to.
And unfortunately, the behavioral complaints are oftentimes what push the complaints that do drive the complaints. It's leaking sewage tanks that are dripping out onto the streets. It's garbage being left out on the curb strip. It's people urinating in the bushes. It's not real common to get a complaint where it's purely there's a vehicle here and it's just been here. It's oftentimes it is behavioral stuff that isn't criminal in nature in and of itself, but when it's combined into a package, between people being uncomfortable with that element parked out in front of their home and mixed with the other elements that are what are driving most of the complaints, or a lot of them anyway, unfortunately.
Thank you. Edward, I have you next.
Okay.
Claire, and then Andrew.
I'll try to be brief as possible. So one question I have is, so if you're on the list, you're on the wait list, and the wait list we know is 30 to 60 days, what happens if I get called and the police come again? I've done what I ought to do. I'm on the wait list. I have nowhere else to go. According to the statute, it's willful. I'd argue that it's not particularly willful. But so what's the next step? What's the enforcement action that's usually taken in those instances? Is it just a talk to remind them to move along, or do we actually use the...
We don't necessarily coordinate with them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're on a list with them, it doesn't impact our operations.
So irrespective of being on the wait list or not, if you have a second contact in 30 days, you're in violation. And then what's the usual enforcement that we see?
We actually don't tow that many. We just don't have the staff to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And how about fines?
Honestly, we don't get a whole lot that are still within the 30 days by the time they get another complaint.
Yeah.
So getting somebody that's actually in that window is fairly uncommon. If we do find them in that window, and especially if it's a repeated person, I had some where I warned them every month for 4 or 5 months, where you could look back at my contacts with them, handed a notice on this date, handed a notice on this date, handed a notice on this date, but it was always outside of the 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that common, just because of the way the system works to even get to that opportunity.
And everybody will say they're on the list.
Oh, yeah.
I talked to Keith, and I'm on the list. It's not necessarily true.
Yeah, I had one gentleman that for months and months and months, and I gave him break after break after break because he was days away from some other thing that was going to get him off the street, and yet it just went on and on and on and on.
Okay.
Or I get the police said, I can park here. They said it was okay, so you go away.
I'm sure that does happen. So at the car camping locations, then those 43 locations with however many spots there are, there's now a drug-free policy, and we drug test people as a requirement for entry into the program. Is that what I heard?
Lately, we have, yes.
We did that because there was a lot of problems at a couple of very public, sites that were viewable to the public, let's put it that way. We would like to not drug test, just because, that's who a lot of our clients are. So we hope to get back to that. If you get into the program and you're clean for, while you're entry, we probably wouldn't kick you out if, unless there was a problem.
Okay.
And I've had people pass the drug test and then a month later fail the drug test.
Yeah. So, and that's applicable on the city-owned sites as well, right? It's not just
right.
The private businesses or private churches or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. So just a comment that I would contribute to that, and just especially with the city-owned sites, is that we did adopt a Housing First resolution. The city does not have a public shelter to the fullest extent of my knowledge, and so it seems to me like car camping that's run through a city contract on city-owned property is the closest thing to a public shelter that we do have. And having a drug testing policy as a prerequisite, albeit temporary, seems to me to be not in compliance with the Housing First ordinance that council recently adopted. And so from my perspective as a human rights commissioner and a commission that worked hard on that, I'd really encourage council to think about that, and as the contract is up for renewals, consider how we might approach that in a different way. I'm very sensitive to the reasons why it's there.
Absolutely, yeah.
But so that's something that I might consider to look at. And the other thing is on the service animals. I'm glad that Edward G. you brought this up. I did notice in the contract, particularly in Exhibit F, the miscellaneous section explicitly prohibits pets, and there's no exception for service animals.
I think that's on just city sites.
Yeah.
But.
So I would just be, I would be. There's no exception for service animals. It's just a blatant no animals, period. And so my caution on that is that could likely not be in compliance with the ADA. And so I would have the city attorney look at that section and make sure that we're in compliance with that, because we ought to be. Thanks.
It does say they can have dogs in our contract.
So that was that's in the resident contract, right? Is that
This is Exhibit E.
Yeah, in Exhibit E sub I. So if you go to Exhibit F on the following page, page 8, miscellaneous number 2, it says no pets or animals are permitted on site, and that's underlined, and so that's one of the addendums to the city contract. Right, so that's the city's contract with St. Vinny's, not the contract that St. Vinny's has with the residents.
Right.
So, thank you.
In response to your concern about the drug testing, I agree. I think we all probably agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason that's come about is at a couple of particular sites where behavioral issues cause disturbances. And I think that taking up a discussion of perhaps moving those sites, if we want to get to that model, moving those sites to somewhere in the vicinity that maybe would be less sensitive to the negative behavior that it comes. It's the same thing with the pets also.
Yeah.
Or with dogs in general, because again, at one particular site that I'm thinking of, which is the WizTech Science Factory, we were having problems with animals at those locations, causing disturbances and disruptions, as well as behavior. And so perhaps reviewing the site locations for whether or not they're appropriate for drug use, and making some fine adjustments, opening up the door to make some adjustments in order to be able to get back to that would be a solution to kind of bridging both of those issues.
I do appreciate that.
Or just drug test if there's behavioral issues as opposed to a prerequisite to get into the program.
Yeah, that would be an alternative. And I know I'm going to say it a lot nicer than some of my colleagues on the commission. So I think you'd rather hear it from me than from some of them.
Did you capture the question?
My cue.
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay. So we'll get a response in writing for both commissions.
Thank you. and Claire, and then Andrew and myself.
Thank you. So I have some comments or just some perspectives. Since sitting on council, we hear about some of these issues that maybe commissioners don't, and then some questions. And thank you very much for being here and spending the time with us to share this information about this. I think, compared to how we might handle this situation, I think this is, not perfect, but a more proactive way than perhaps other cities might handle this issue. So I do really appreciate the amount of effort, care, and consideration that you all put into trying to administer this program. So, and I hope you won't take any of my questions as a reflecting negatively on anything you're doing. In some cases, my role is to ask some of these questions. And I will just share, City Council has received via email at times, it was a few months ago now, but a series of emails, desperately calling for some enforcement out in the West Eugene industrial area, where there were businesses that were really being impacted by illegal car campers, and they were sending us emails. Does anybody care that this is happening to us? So we get those, please. And then we also have times where we get very moving and emotional testimony from folks who come to City Council and share with us that they had their doors pounded on at 1 o'clock in the morning, and they were threatened with towing. They had small children. And, it's not up to us to decide whether or not those things happened or not. We're not the judge of that, but we need to take that into account as we're thinking about these things. So in terms of what Edward brought up about the contract or the ordinance, I don't know which one it was, not calling out an exception for service animals, my understanding is that we have to comply with that ADA. So even though we might not have it in print in the ordinance, we can't discriminate against service animals. But I would, and I am actually pretty disturbed to hear about the drug testing. That really surprises me, because I agree with Edward's comments that in terms of our Housing First policy, that would not be a requirement for someone to enter into housing, and I had assumed that was not applied to the car camping program. So I'm just going to encourage and say, for the record, I think, we just heard from Judge Allen about this community court where they're going to bring people in and on a case-by-case basis really assess, how can we support this person, where did they go, and you do that with where might this particular camper work best in which kind of spot. And so I'm going to really encourage that we try to use that approach with the drug issue and pets, because we know, you become homeless with your pet. Sometimes people get evicted from places that, I've recently heard of a situation in Whitaker where an apartment complex was bought out by a new property management. They said no pets, and people had to decide whether to get rid of their pets or move out. So, pets are emotional support. They're an important part of people's mental health and emotional health, and so I hope we can move to a place where we're trying to just consider on a case-by-case basis, can we work with this person? Can we work with their pet, whether it's a dog, a cat, a ferret, whatever it might be. So going more into questions, Keith, I think, mentioned that if something's going on, the police response would be immediate. So would that be a situation where you might get a complaint that says, I think there's drug dealing going on out of this vehicle or something like that, or is it more disturbing the peace or some kind of disruption? So can you think of examples where you might get a more immediate response to a complaint about an illegal camper?
Those honestly are going to be the people that are more vocal. That's the more immediate response. I mean, if there's a significant public safety risk or one that's the sewage leaking, I know Public Works will get those complaints, and then the Public Works, one of the Public Works coordinators will message me directly, and if it's got a leaky sewage problem, then I'll try to get somebody out ASAP to get them notified. They'll put a drip pan underneath it to try to collect in the meantime. But realistically, the bigger problems are the ones where they've been there a long time. We've had a hard time getting out there. Keith's had a hard time getting out there. We've had a hard time getting out there, and we'll go out of our way to actually call an evening watch commander or a daytime watch commander, somebody else to try to make sure that we get even just a regular patrol officer to go deal with it. And oftentimes it comes down to the ones that are making the highest community impact by disturbing the neighbors or the neighbors, whether it's residential or commercial the most. The West Eugene neighborhoods, for example. There are some areas where we would get complaints every single day because people are there every single day. And in response to that, were a few areas where our policy says that we're complaint driven. Due to the massive number of complaints we've received in some of those areas, I have authorized or interpreted the contract to allow officers to be more proactive in those very specific places, because it's just not fair to the business owners to have to call in to them to say, well, yeah, you just got to call us every day, because it's not fair. And so there are very few select areas and for durations of time. Down in Skinner's Butte, there's a section on, blanking the street name now, Cheshire, where we received a high number, and I know some council members received some complaints there where an officer was willing to take on that project, and I said, we've got enough complaints that you patrol it regularly and proactively enforce it, because it's a problem, it's an ongoing problem. So we've tried to respond to those as best we can.
So, and my ward includes Whitaker. I live in Whitaker. I was sympathetic with the public comment. I think that reflects both, not everyone is of the same mind, in the neighborhood in terms of how to address these issues. You also mentioned, or you indicated, particularly Keith, that you're often familiar with the folks that you contact, and so sometimes I've wondered when we've had folks come to City Council, if maybe they were very new to town and didn't know all of the resources that might be available to them, and what your experiences might be with folks who've just arrived and have decided to go to camp.
Making contact with
them?
My approach is always to approach the situation with respect, because that's what I want back. So I'm not going out there in the hostile and hey, I'm Keith. I introduce myself and tell them why I'm there. I'm here as a courtesy first responder to let you know that there's been a complaint lodged against you that you're sleeping in your vehicle. You can't do that. I work for the service station, St. Vincent de Paul. You can come over there and take a shower, do your laundry, do that whole thing, and try to educate them and go from there.
Yeah, that's great. And this may answer this other question. So there might be instances where a car camper is contacted by law enforcement before they've actually been contacted by St. Vincent de Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we would run through, most often, we would run through a similar set of, we don't want to take enforcement action if we can help it. The first direction I've given to officers and taken myself is to give the warning, not the citation, even a violation citation, which could be the first offense as well. And it really is to try to find out how much are they new to town, are they familiar with the services. I can tell you, I haven't talked to very many people that aren't already tied in, and I don't know how many of those contacts I've made, but I've responded to a lot of camping complaints personally, and there just were very few that I was able to educate about what's available. They know they're parking in an area because they know that church around that corner is offering breakfast tomorrow morning, or they're trying to get over to the service station to go pick up their stuff. Oftentimes it's people that are aware of the services that are available here. So I didn't have that experience very often.
Yeah.
Keith and I've talked about it, and he's relayed to me that he's in a similar, where most of the time these are people that he's familiar with.
And then who is paying for the drug testing?
St. Vincent de Paul.
And does St. Vincent de Paul also pay for the porta potties and the trash collection? Is that provided for by the contract?
That's provided by the contract. It's gone back and forth where we had, way more porta potties and garbage than was in the budget, And so we carried it for a year or 2 or 3 and then said, you know, can't do it anymore, had to cut back, got the money back, you know how that goes, so.
I think those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Andrew, myself, and the queue, and Bill in the second go around, unless somebody hasn't spoken on the first one. Andrew?
Okay, yeah. First of all, I just wanted to say thanks for all your work that you do. Really appreciate it. And then also thanks for making time for us this evening. I guess some of my questions have kind of been addressed already, but I know for some of the homeless population, having dogs are a big comfort. So I don't know if that is something that can be negotiated in future contracts, if there's any consideration about having a facility where there might allow pets. Just something to think about.
I mean, it's at several of the private places. Yeah. So we have dogs. We're very dog friendly. It's just not on the city spots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so.
I guess I misunderstood.
Would you say a majority of our people have dogs, or?
A majority.
Yeah.
Okay.
For the city spots, we had an incident over at the Science Factory where the dog's name was Tank, and he looked like a tank. It was a pit bull.
Appropriately named.
Yeah. And so, although he didn't get to the kid, he like went through the bushes, and there's a woman and her baby on her chest, and one ear, and the dog scared the bejesus out of her. You know, this big old pit bull. And we've had other situations where they have actually bitten people. So
we've had 3 pit bull incidents. One was right across the street from our center, where somebody was visiting a camping site, which is also against the rules, attacked a 2-year-old here about 2 or 3 years ago.
Bit her in the face.
Yeah, and so, but most of our sites,
Are
they
dog
do
friendly.
are dog friendly. Yes.
But those are the private ones, and they're in industrial or, you know, a site that a client has gone out and generated themselves.
Sure. Great. Well, that's good to hear, but I also understand that, you know, need to have areas where there might not be animals allowed. My other question was just if there had been any thought or discussion about like expanding the limit of, you know, cars per lot, maybe based on like the size of the lot. For example, if you had a business that had very large parking lot, a lot of parking spaces, if there was any thought about allowing more vehicles to camp in those.
It has been our experience that we don't want to go over 4. Because if you, 10 people in one lot, and if they all don't get along, then these guys are going to be here all the time, you know, breaking up fights and whatnot, and it's just not.
It's not only matching the person to the site, it's matching if there's more than one slot, the person to the person. And so we know who gets along at the center, and, you know, it's kind of a shell game on you know, who we put with who, so we know they're to minimize the problems.
I think the ordinance went up to 6. It was 3, and then they raised it to 6, but we kind of leave it at 4. And it's just better for me to manage it. Sure. And all the different personalities and all that.
From our side also, we wind up getting more complaints because the more that are allowed at each spot, the more we wind up with 3 or 4 tag-alongs that blend into the mix, and it's harder to, it's easier to blend in when there's more to add 1 or 2 or 3 onto the end. And then we get complaints from that way as well.
Those are my other questions, so thanks.
So only thing I wanted to bring up was, Carter and I talked about the issue of police enforcement of the homeless issue. And I just have to try to say that there has to be some balance in here, because what we have is we have people who are very unfortunate and don't have a place to live, and that's a horrible situation. But we also have people who live in the city, and we heard some tonight who said they have concerns, they go to work, and maybe this person still camped out there now, have they got to worry about their home and their security. I mean, they pay their taxes, they go to work every day, they try to do the right thing, and they call. So they have a right to expect, if there's a law in place to deal with it, for the police to respond to that, or at least some agency, and thank you for helping relieve our police of having that first responsibility. And I just want to keep everything in perspective in my mind, so that I understand that there are 2 sides to every coin, and as long as we can have a solution, and I understand what Raquel said, about having a solution first, before you start enforcement. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where they're not addressing the solution. So the answer to folks who really feel like they want to stop this is either to take away the ordinance completely so that people can park wherever they want, but I don't think you're going to find the public approval for that. So I don't know. I think what we're having to see here is striking a good balance for everyone so that we try to accommodate everybody in the situation. And I commend you for doing that. That's all I want to say.
Well, I was going to say, in similar lines that Bob just talked about. I mean, we did hear from people that do have concerns, and I think they do deserve some, some attention to the issue. One thing I thought about, and this, I remember one time when I had to call the police, and the policeman came back and told me what he had done. It was very, even though how he handled the situation. Do we do that with this? Do we go back to the people that are complaining, the neighbors, and kind of go, we've made contact, they're going to move, or we can't, so that whether it's through email, through phone call, I just think that might be, because in a lot of the discussions and a lot of the emails that we've received, it seems that everybody goes, well, nothing's being done. And obviously there is things being done, and we're working on it. So I guess somehow we need to have that getting back to the people that are calling, and I'm not sure what's the easiest way to do that, but I think that's something that maybe we need to try to put into this program to do that. I think that's an important piece.
When it comes to us, Kyle and I have asked our officers to try and look back with the complaining party when possible. We try to do that on most all of our police calls. We've had a discussion with Keith about it, and I'm not sure that you're able to do that necessarily near as much as you'd like.
My experience is most of them just want them gone, and not so that they don't know it was them that called on them for fear of retribution.
We get a lot of anonymous complaints. That's absolutely something that we can do a better job of, and it's something that we've had a discussion about in the last probably 6 months as we've really started to collaborate with PDD, who actually monitors the contract in St. Vincent, and Lieutenant Vincent coming aboard as the lieutenant on it. And that is one of the things we've talked about, is trying to bridge that gap so that people at least know that we may not have made it out to solve their problem, but at least we know that they have a problem. And oftentimes that is to a degree comforting to people. It's difficult, being that we have a hard time getting officers out once it gets to that stage to even then put another step on it. But it's something that's out in the open that we've already discussed, and it's something we hadn't mentioned, and so I'm glad you brought that up.
And I have called the complainant, during the course of me doing this over the years, is if I can't find him, they go, oh no, he's right there, around the corner. And they'll tell me where they're at, and then I can call them right back and say, okay, we got them, whatever.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. We reached the end of our agenda. The time is 8:30, so we still have 2 items on our agenda, so I'll need a motion to extend time if you wish to hear the chief's report. All right, this concludes the joint meeting where we have a public comment. So the people.
Some of you are released.
Let me say something real quick. So some things that I heard were the questions about the drug testing for some sites, not allowing dogs on some sites, the circling back with complainants. So what I'm going to ask our team to do is to have a discussion about those things. We'll get Carter will help us to put together a written response to both commissions on all of that.
All right.
Thank you, Chief.
I'll move to extend 10 minutes.
Motion by Claire, seconded by Edward to spend 10 minutes for the concluding remarks and Chief's presentation. Thank you. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Stay cold.
No, we went.
Yeah.
No, that's for everything.
Okay,
Well, you've probably already seen the report, so I'll just point out a few things.
okay.
The one thing on here that you may not recognize is the SWORD Advisory Board. There's a research institute in Eugene that is conducting a study on what would help to reduce communication methods that might help to reduce safety issues or danger in school. So there isn't a whole lot that I can report on about that right now, but I'm on their advisory board. It's just started. The homeless advisory meeting, I've mentioned this a couple of times. We had the meeting at the dining room, and this isn't going to be a standing committee because of the difficulty of being homeless and being able to do things routine on a schedule. But Josie, thanks. Josie, who runs the dining room, helped pull some folks together. Kyle and Sergeant Ryan Nelson and one of our downtown officers, and Carter and I met with a handful of folks who've been on the street for some time. Josie invited. We had lunch together and had a pretty good conversation. And Carter took some notes about what we heard. It was interesting. We're digesting that. We'll decide what we can do with it. But the idea is we'll continue having these for a while. The idea is to ask what do we need to know in order to better serve people who are homeless or homeless communities. Those are my activities. Then you can see some of the items that were in the news. And then you'd asked about policies that we'd implemented. Kyle has been pretty productive. You can see these 5 policies on the policies page that are, I think they're all renewals, right?
Yeah, those 5 have just been reviews that were very minor, basic tweaks in language and whatnot.
And then they're also attached. And so in my monthly report, you'll see a list of those that were approved in the last month and those that we're working on. We just don't have that forward button on this particular report. And then, and then Officer Randy Ellis is going to retire, he says, on June 29th. And so we're planning a get-together for that because he's been here it'll be 46 years. Historic.
Yeah.
I doubt if that will happen again anytime soon. So we're going to make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
And he deserves it. He's done a great job with the West University area. And we're going to try and pull a rabbit out of the hat and renew the contract. And university and the business association there are committed to doing that. So I think pretty hopeful that we can find a way to renew the contract. We'll get the next generation of Randy Ellis out there. That's what I've got.
Very good. Any questions for the chief? Jim?
I don't know that it wasn't really in here, but with the Olympic trials coming, do you have a lot of help from a lot of other jurisdictions for security and support there?
Not really. In 2008, we had considerable assistance from the federal government and some state agencies. In 2012, we had quite a bit, but less. This time, even less than then. I think smaller budgets, increased expenses, and new focuses on domestic terrorism and international terrorism. So there's less available for us.
Do you have some concerns there? I mean,
we have.
If there are a lot of terrorist concerns or terrorism concerns, then what a target.
Yeah, the nature of terrorism is that where it does happen, there isn't any warning. That's why it's able to happen. But we do monitor. The FBI is a good partner. They share their intelligence with us. We will have a security plan that able to prevent the kinds of things that have been happening around the world at events like this. places like this where people gather. Has a pretty low threat level, but so do Super Bowls, or so do Sunday afternoon NFL games. So we're going to have a security model that simulates what you'll see there. That's what we've done in 12 and 8.
It's just a lot of days. It's not just the one event. It's spread out over a couple days. So
yeah, it's expensive.
I'll be there for some of it. I know.
Well, then you let us know what days, and we'll make sure.
Yeah, I'll make sure. Yeah.
Increase staff or decrease staff, which is
I'm getting put on as an employee, so Homeland's even doing a background check on me. So yeah, I should be able to pass that. I hope. But I'm just wondering, especially since I'll be there, I'll be in some of the back areas too. So
yeah, we'll have the same level of security that we've had the last few years. If it's smaller, it won't be because it's a different level of security. It's because some people will have to wait longer to get in, but it'll be the same.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Claire.
So on the West University contract, is Sacred Heart part of that?
Well, Sacred Heart gives us a pretty good deal on the public safety station.
Oh,
the contract
it's on
is
their
$1 a year. Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's how they support
yes.
it. Yeah. Great.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Very good. Glad to hear that. There's now commissioner comments, and I'd like to lead off with your permission. I appreciate having served as your chairperson for the last 2 terms. I understand you elected me the first time, and that was, but I'm completely, I can't get around my head that you would have elected me again after having for some reason you did. So I appreciate the 2 terms that I served as your chairperson, and I'm happy to turn the reins over to Bill, who will do a great job, and I'm sure. And so thank you all for all the support you've given me over the last 2 years. I appreciate that. It's been, when I first came here, it was chest tightening situation in the meetings. Everybody, the tension was palpable. You could feel it. I think thanks to you all, have created an atmosphere where everybody understands and appreciates everybody else's opinion. And it's really worked well for us. So thank you. Anybody else? Edward?
I'll yield to the counselor first.
Oh, thank you, since I don't get to talk enough. So first, Bob, you've been an excellent chair, and thank you so much for your leadership. You've really have just helped guide us, keep us on track, been a voice of reason, while not afraid to expressing your own opinions. So just a great example of what it means to chair a citizen committee like this. And Bill, you've got some big shoes to fill. And then I want to thank our outgoing commissioners, including Joe, who's not here, for your work, for giving up a long evening once a month and adding your voice to these important conversations. And thanks so much for your service. I really, really appreciate it. And then I just wanted to comment on the 2 big topics we had. Kind of speaking to Bill's concern that people are going to question, why are we investing in the community court? What's that going to do for us? And I guess my feeling about it right now is, we got a grant from, a federal agency to get it up and running. And so at this point, it's not taking anything away from what we're doing now. It's hoping to enhance what we already have. It feels to me that a lot of the folks who are going to go into that court aren't necessarily being held accountable for some of their activities now because of this cyclical thing you have with the fine and no jail and what does that accomplish anyway. So I really feel it has the potential to interrupt a cycle of bad behavior, and so I just think expectations should kind of be linked to that that it's not really taking resources from somewhere else to put them here, but trying to add value and some rationality to how we approach certain folks who may interact with the criminal justice system. And then on the car camping arrest stops, I don't know if Randy is still here. No, he's gone. But I was very pleased to hear Randy Prince's testimony about the Council of Southeast Neighbors taking up the idea of looking for some more rest stops or car camping locations. That is fantastic. That's something I've been pleading into the air about, into the wind for 2 years now. And I just want to remind folks that our car camping and rest stop programs have a very good track record. There's no evidence that they have a negative impact on nearby neighbors or businesses. And I think while they are temporary shelter, emergency shelter, they're not meant to be permanent, they are much better for both the people who use them and the community than being out, sleeping in the bushes or in their car in some random location around town. So, thanks.
I just want to say I've spent the last 3 years aware that before I got here, there was tension between Human Rights Commission people and Police Commission people, perhaps in this very room. And I've really tried to work hard to change that situation and to build bridges, and you all have helped that tremendously, so thank you. Having this joint session just before the HRC is going to pick its new liaison to this commission was very wise. I would have liked to see more HRC commissioners here, but at least there were people here who go, oh, so that's what a police commission meeting looks like. Maybe I'll volunteer to be the liaison when Edward leaves. So thank you for that, because it's kind of been hard to describe to some people what they would be getting into and who would they'd be working with. So I think this was a very this has been a very good experience for some of them. So thank you for that.
Bill?
I just want to thank our outgoing members for your service. Jim, we're going to miss that, your proofreading ability, our notes and our policies to do that. And Edward, I want to thank you. I mean, you have been a great liaison from the HRC, and I appreciate that. And I'm hoping that we continue on. Monday, you and I will find out if we can.
Yes, we will. Yeah.
And but thank you for all your work.
Thanks.
Jim, and then.
Well, I want to thank everybody. It is good that the Human Rights Commission was here on a night like tonight. If this had been a couple years ago, I'm not so sure they would have walked away with the same opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I first started, I'm not so sure they would have walked away with the same opinion. There's always, seems, until recently, there's always been somebody that's really had a really strong agenda that they were always constantly pushing and stirring up a lot of issues and angst in the group. So it's very nice to leave a commission that everybody has the opportunity to discuss items and everybody's respected and everybody seems to get along really well, which is pretty rare with this many people in one group. As I said, they're limited to 4 people, and that's even sometimes sounds like it's a little difficult, but it's been great. And Claire, I'm glad I got to know you, and even the mayor too. I have opportunities to meet with the counselors that I've never had the opportunity to, and I think it's been a great opportunity to meet with everybody. So I want to thank you. And the opportunities I've been given, something that other people won't be able to get unless the chief somehow miraculously gets a lot of money, is the Citizens Police Academy, which I can't recommend. If any money can be spared for that. I mean, that was a tremendous value to me. I think it would be tremendous value to anybody to go through that if it's ever offered again. Thank you.
I'll be very brief because our 10 minutes are already over. I just want to thank everybody. I'm glad I missed all the fun there that you speak of.
No, you're not.
I do appreciate everybody. I appreciate your electing me to this board. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to spend the entire term, but I feel like it's in very good hands, and there's a lot of really intelligent, thoughtful people. I was telling Claire the other day that I don't need to be here because she always expresses an opinion that I am thinking and much more articulately, so I'll know that it's all in other people as well, so I really do. I'm sad that I didn't get to do things like the ride along or that shooting thing to decide whether to shoot or not, and I hope someday to have the opportunity to participate in the Citizens Academy and to continue to participate in other ways. I know we've spoken before about other things that I do want to follow up when the time allows. And I hope you'll contact me, shape, whatever. I can be of service. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Move to adjourn.
All right.
We're adjourned. Undebatable.
That's the kind of leadership you can count on from me and Bill.
That's 10 minutes into the meeting.
Right along.
Really?
It's conceivable that... Yeah, I did.